Good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to our Corte Madera Town Council meeting of June 19th. And Rebecca, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Andrews.
Here.
Councilmember Bailey.
Here.
Councilmember Vazio. Vice Mayor First. Here. Mayor Condon.
Here. And we are reconvening from a closed session that we had earlier, and I have nothing to report. Now, if you'll all please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Diane, would you like some water?
Okay, and we'll continue with open time. This is a time when any member of the public can step forward and speak to anything that is not on tonight's agenda. Dr. Bundy.
Bob Bundy, Golden Hind Passage. On behalf of the Corte Madera Community Foundation, who sort of sponsored and raised money for this arbor project at the town plaza, I want to thank Todd Cusimano for being able to find a contractor to do the project and resurrecting it. We thought it was going to languish for a period of time, so we're looking forward to seeing that completed. Thank you, Todd.
And I just want to give credit to Jared, our new engineer. That was all him, so thank you, Jared. Make me look good.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Yes.
Yes. Good evening, council members, staff. My name is Roy Wolford. I live at 37C Wolf Passage along with my wife Arlene. And I wanted to address the council on Sanitary District 2 Ordinance 45. I have a number of exhibits that I have titled EX 1, 2, 3, and 4. I will hand this information over to the town clerk on the finish of my presentation. And so council members, you are being asked to rescind and revise Ordinance 45, number 45, for the following reasons. 1, promises were made to property owners, but it does not appear to be kept. And so I have exhibits 2, 2A, and 3 to support that. The town is reneging on the commitment to property owners to replace sewer laterals and perform inspections with sizable increase in fees, taxes, in the years 2005, 2010, 2015, per the exhibits I mentioned earlier. 2, inequities. Different property owners under ordinance number 45 will be treated differently and frankly unfairly. The die was cast, the precedent set when property owners along a sizable section of Golden Hind Passage were not charged for the lower lateral replacement costs during the sewer main replacement. Now, Ordinance 45 changes the rules. Going forward, property owners must pay for lateral replacements and inspection, contrary to past practices and promises. 3, the town, by publicly declaring the sewer piping and laterals are damaged, and again, I've got an exhibit on this and it's mentioned in the notes here, has enabled CE and other earthquake insurers to deny earthquake damage claims should an earthquake cause major damage. This could have a very significant detrimental impact on property owners who could not afford the additional $10,000 to $25,000 in costs to recover the major property damage caused by an earthquake. My deductible right now is almost $75,000, and to put an additional $10,000 to $25,000 on top of that is very difficult to deal with. The sewer lateral repair costs would add an additional tax of somewhere between 13% and 33%. 4, the greater than 50,000 construction permit threshold to inspect adds cost to property owners who want to only raise their house structures above the FEMA 100-year flood level. Raising a structure is not an improvement, it's a mitigation, and is partially returning the structure to a previous state. So I'm raising it 3 feet. When my wife and I moved in to our house over in Seawolf Passage in 1974, we were about 7 feet higher in elevation, or 6 feet higher in elevation, excuse me. A major reason I didn't elevate the structure was I was going to get hit with all sorts of additional regulatory costs. This ordinance is one more in 5,665 reasons houses are more expensive and unaffordable. And that number comes from one of the exhibits where that was the estimated number of houses that were hit by this lateral fee.
Mr. Wolford, yeah, time is up. Mr. Wolford, do you have those comments that you could pass over to our town clerk? And then we'll look
Certainly.
into that.
Arlene, could you step in and finish my presentation?
Okay.
That's why you bring reinforcements.
Yeah. Okay, so we
And
will,
by the way, while she lives up here, I'm gonna, I've sent in a whole lot of photographs on what's happening. I'm gonna send, she had knee surgery at the beginning of the year, and walking around the sidewalks with all the landmines and stuff from our wonderful trees that have torn it up on people.
Okay.
So start with 5
so
here.
we'll make notice that, that Mrs. Wolford is now speaking to this issue.
Okay, the town has unilaterally declared property owners the owner of the sewer laterals, and that's Exhibit 1 on page 9. All the way to the main, which in case would be across the town's streets. This ownership is not recorded in my deed, and I was never notified of this forced ownership. Well, I decline any ownership of a public utility beyond my property line. No other public utility, to the best of my knowledge, has declared property owners or residents own any part of the infrastructure that is part of their service. Okay. Action items. Immediately rescind ordinance number 45. Immediately develop a plan to inspect all sewer laterals and execute that plan to verify the condition of the laterals from sewer fees collected since 2005. Remember, there's only speculation as to what is the cause of the increased water flow into the sewer system. Immediately declare the town as the owner of the lower sewer lateral and will uphold its commitment to maintain and inspect the laterals with the sewer fees already in place. Grant a waiver on the greater than 50,000 threshold for those property owners who are only raising the structure in order to mitigate structural flooding. Recognize the cost of the lateral replacement must be based on income rather than space.
Skip it.
In my case, average cost $10,000 for replacement would be about a third of my annual Social Security benefit. This is not less than 0.5% of 1%. I have no other pension. Also recognize the statement, the property owner owns the home, is silly. The structure isn't cash or a piggy bank. Many who treated their property as cash during 2004 to 2010 went through foreclosures.
Read this.
Okay, a sewer lateral replacement program is being planned and will be initiated as part of the sewer rehabilitation program. And this was on page 7 of the Corte Madera Town Council Chamber, the meeting on May 3rd, 2005.
Okay, thank you
Thank you.
very
Thank you.
much. Thank you both.
I just want to summarize. I know you folks do a
Yeah.
terrific job, and we're not here to beat you up. And thank you, you too. I'm not going to hang around, but thank you for your service.
Okay,
Appreciate it.
thank you. And Arlene, speedy recovery.
Do you mind if I ask Todd to clarify something?
Sure.
Todd, it's my understanding that the sewer laterals have always been the property of the property owner, and that is the case for every sanitary district, at least everyone in the county, if not the state. Isn't that correct?
That's correct, and that's what we're trying to do, is be consistent with what everyone else in the county is doing. Also, we have had a practice in the past on certain projects to cover some of the sewer lateral costs, and that's, I think, what the Wolfords are relating to, and I think that's what we talked about at our last meeting, of being consistent in whatever we do. And I
Okay.
think that's still part of our policy conversation on town projects that we initiate. Should we build in a formula in a program of how we do that? And so we're just trying to be consistent, and we're trying to be clear on whose responsibility it is and what the town should be doing.
Okay, and is that coming up in a future council meeting within the next month or two?
Yes, in the
Okay.
next 60 days.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Can I say one thing?
Yes.
You know, Roy, I know you probably know this. We can't engage in a meaningful way because it's not on the agenda. But you should know that we listen carefully and we appreciate your thoughtful comments.
Okay. Anyone else like to speak? Yes. Please. Sally, welcome.
My name is Sally Gillardin, and I was working more than full-time throughout most of my adult life, including while my children were growing up in Marin County. And we moved to Corte Madera almost a dozen years ago and lived in Marin for the past 34 years. And when I recently retired, I just want to thank so much the mayor, Mayor Carla, and Patty Stoller, the head of the age-friendly committee, for giving me an opportunity to share my experience and expertise at the Intergenerational Center. And there'll be 30 more years of people like me that will want to participate in something in the county. And this is just a wonderful opportunity, and I hope it grows. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sally. And Sally has been real committed to being a real leader in our cause and has a great program going with Movie Book Club. And thank you very much for your kind words, Sally. Anybody else here? Okay, then we'll close to public comment, and we will move on. This is something I'm really proud of. I would like to introduce to all of you Rafi Nazarians, who has flown up from Southern California and represents ARP. And he is here to make a little presentation. And it was such a pleasure meeting you earlier today. And I will turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Mayor Condon, council members. I'm Rafi Nazarian, Associate State Director from AARP California, here this evening to officially welcome the town of Corte Madera into the AARP and World Health Organization Age-Friendly Network. Corte Madera was the 195th community in the United States to join, thereby making a commitment to becoming a community that's age-friendly, more age-friendly, and a great place to live for people of all ages. By joining the AARP network of age-friendly communities, Corte Madera is now a part of an international team of progressive leaders who recognize the importance of making their communities better for people of all ages. Now, as a member, the town will begin a 2-year planning process and engage community residents and stakeholders and focus on the 8 domains of livability, including transportation, housing, open spaces. I had the honor of getting a tour from the mayor of the Intergenerational Center earlier this afternoon. Really great experience. Really excited to see what happens with that. And AARP is here to work with you, provide technical assistance when we can in the age-friendly process. So thank you again, Mayor, and congratulations to the town of Corte Madera. And I have a plaque that I've brought for the city, so I hope you enjoy it. Thank you very much.
Rafi, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for coming up all the way from Southern California. This is quite an honor.
It's so special to be able to focus on the positive. And I am so proud. And of course, the accolades go to Patty Stolier, who has been just given birth to this whole thing. And so we're so grateful, Patty. And we're really growing. Had a wonderful day today with the cutest little preschoolers, and with one of our residents who's in her 90s, read them stories, and we had 3D printer demonstration today also, and people coming in to play the puzzle. So anyway, it's really been great, and I hope that all of you take advantage of the different activities that we offer. There are activities for all ages, and it's not just for little kids, it's not just for the older adults, it's for everybody. So anyway, Rafi, again, thank you so much. Now, next, this is embarrassing. Okay. Next, I think can I just turn it over to you? Okay, good. I'm going to turn this part over to our town manager, Todd Cusimano.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. I think there's a lot of people here that want to speak and recognize you, but as my bosses, I'm going to start it off. And I just, working in this community for 22, 23 years, being the police chief, I never truly appreciated what a council member goes through until I got to work closely with you for the last 18 months. And it's the most thankless job, and it's one of the most difficult jobs. I have just such a true appreciation for the two of you, of what you mean to this town, what you mean to me and the staff and our community, and I don't think you can ever fully acknowledge you for what you've done. And it really starts with your families. Steve, you guys have been through a lot, and it's tough because it affects the family. You have late meetings. Diane is attached to every major project in this county. You've been a part of it, and so I don't know when you're home, if at all, so I bet you guys are looking forward to being together.
I'm home once in a while.
Well, it's good that you're going to spend some more quality time. And then, Rich, and I think is Carla's husband, and I think Catherine, your daughter, is here as well, but I know Rich is really looking forward to having you home. I can see it on his face every time I see him. He's like, can we get this over with? Quit talking, Todd. Let's go. I want this meeting over with. But again, just recognizing that it affects the families and what your husbands and family have gone through. The two of you mean so much, and so the importance of this town, you are fierce protectors of this town. And we can always be judged on our decisions, but what you mean to this town and me is it's unbelievable. Diane, you've been a big proponent of process. Process is important. Everything we do, let's talk about process. This is the right process. Public safety, being a big part of Central Marin Police Authority in that consolidation. You've chaired the police authority. You've helped a big part of the consolidation of the fire authority. Public safety has always been important to you in what you've done to support us there. Flood control, transportation, ped and bike access and safety throughout our whole community. I just can't say enough of the time, you were mayor before Carla, and being able to spend, as I started as the manager, just the patience you showed, the leadership, the guidance that you've given me. I really, truly appreciate your thought process, your leadership, and what you've done for this community. Carla, a lot of the same things, a fierce protector of the town. You have been a big proponent of local control and protecting the town's voice. And all of your work on LAFCO. Public safety, again, police and fire, you've been right in there. You've also chaired the police council. You've helped us with our fire consolidation. And you've always given us guidance on how to do things the right way, how to treat people. Age-friendly, our aging community, the intergenerational center, what you've done, we've talked about it a lot this past year, very successful. Without you, we wouldn't be here today in the position we are to really provide services to our community moving forward. Both of you, the public works maintenance, our infrastructure, our maintenance crew is so important, and you've taken your time personally. I've spent a lot of time in public works maintenance recently. And I see those notes, and I see the thoughtfulness you put in giving them positive reinforcement and feedback, showing your appreciation for the team that actually protects our town. And that really means a lot to them. And again, just protecting our small town character. Really, those are the things that jump out at me when I think of the two of you. I just appreciate you. I also want to acknowledge it's unheard of. Both of you have chaired the police council multiple times. Diane, you've been the mayor in 2012 and 2013 and 16 and 17. Carla, you've been the mayor in 2002, 2003, and 2009, 2010, 2014, 2015, and 2018. It's remarkable. It's unheard of. And so we love you. We appreciate you. Thank you for all you've done. So thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Todd. Thank you so much, Todd. And just briefly, it's been such a pleasure serving with you.
I'll second
Terrific.
that.
Good evening, Mayor Condom and council members. I'm Dennis Rodoni, District 4 Supervisor, and it's truly an honor to be here tonight to recognize a couple of retiring city council members who I've had the opportunity to work closely with. I think Diane, we first met in 2012, I believe, and with Carla, I met her in 2006 when we were both on LAFCO together. And she continued that just recently. And on that note, I'd like to honor you with a proclamation from Marin County LAFCO. So I'm wearing two hats tonight. And I think I want to just note that you were on LAFCO from 2006 to just a month ago, or last month. But the one thing that stands out with me was your last month, 3 weeks from when you were supposed to finish, the president of LAFCO, chair of LAFCO, went to Hawaii. And the executive officer and the planner quit, went to other jobs, and we had no one to staff the office. Carla took it upon herself as vice chair, and within 2 weeks found a staff for us, so the doors never closed. So I think that really recognizes what Carla does for our community and the way she's a go-getter and just gets on something to do it, and she gets it done. So I want to share that with you. I'm going to present all this at once because I have 3 things to present. Today, the Board of Supervisors passed resolutions for you both, recognizing your service to Corte Madera and the county. And as Todd mentioned, many of the things I was going to mention, but I work with Diane on the Transportation Authority of Marin. I know she's been very, very active in disaster preparedness. And Carla has done many things besides LAFCO, the age-friendly Corte Madera, which you got another plaque for tonight, and I congratulate Corte Madera on that new venture. Also, the Intergenerational Center that you've started just in a short time. Congratulations on that. But both council members, and this is a credit to them, whereas both council members left Corte Madera with a robust sales tax structure and a fair and balanced budget to ensure that Corte Madera will be financially sound for the near future and the long term. So thank you for doing that. So on behalf of the Board of Supervisors, we passed resolutions in your honor today. I'd like to present those to you. Not only have you been colleagues, but you both have been friends, and I really appreciate it. I'm going to miss you both. I'm going to be calling on you and checking on you and making sure that your life in retirement is really good, and hopefully I can count on you to help me out in some point in the future. So thank you so much.
Dennis,
Thank you.
How are you? Good. Hi. I'm Carol Mills. I'm representing Senator Mike McGuire, and I'm also presenting certificates of recognition from the state legislature signed by both Senator McGuire and Assemblymember Mark Levine. I'm looking out at all your awards that you're getting here, and it's clear you're both going to have to build an extra room. Thank goodness you've got ins with permit people and the planner. Wherever he was. Anyway, it's Senator McGuire sends his best, his love, and his thanks for all you have done and how great you've been to work with. On a personal level, I have worked with you both since 2008 when I started with Senator Leno, and you guys are just the best. I am so envious that you are going to kick back and try something really new and exciting, but I know it'll be as big a success as this has been. And I'm just going to read you the last line in both of your certificates, and it is, "You leave a legacy of leadership, dedication, and passion
for the town you serve so well and take with you the love and gratitude of the entire community. Thank you both so much.
Thank you, Carol. Nice job.
Greetings. I'm Diane Steinhauser. I'm the Director of the Transportation Authority of Marin. And we too want to extend our thanks and appreciation for all that both of you have done for transportation here in Corte Madera and in the surrounding areas of Marin County. Mayor Condon was appointed by the Corte Madera Town Council to the TAM Board as an alternate back in 2009 and remains as such until today. You represented your constituents well. You served on the now infamous Green Bay Corridor Working Group. And, while alternates are often not called on to participate in every meeting, you could be counted upon when you were needed to attend and represent the town, to be knowledgeable and active in any action that came before TAM, and I thank you for that. The Board of Commissioners of the Transportation Authority of Marin hereby recognizes your contributions and wishes you continued success in your retirement. So I know it's not easy to keep up on all the details of what we do in transportation, and I wanted to thank you for being a quick study when you needed to step in.
Oh, thank you, Diane.
You're welcome. And then for our council member and TAM Commissioner, Diane First. Diane was appointed to the TAM Commission in December of 2009. Immediately upon being sworn in, she was recruited to serve on the Highway 101 Green Bay Twin Cities Ad Hoc Committee, first started in 2005, for the purpose of developing a project that addressed congestion and promoted safety in the area of Highway 101. Whereas always a delight, she provided powerful leadership that resulted in TAM creating an innovative public process, which we engaged in citizen participation for several years, looking at the best way to address congestion and safety in the corridor. In April of 2011, you may remember this, Diane, there was a lot here that we dug up in terms of your activity with TAM. You served on a committee that looked at SMART's project costs and funding options. And we were able to derive the funds necessary to assure the SMART extension to Larkspur, which is under construction. So bravo for participating there. In December of 2011, you were appointed to our executive committee, on which you still sit. Your dedication to TAM was further evident through our TDM ad hoc, our sustainable communities strategy ad hoc, that fun effort we went through in 2011 and 12, looking at how, if at all, we could develop some housing here in Marin County. And she's very active on our Safe Routes to Schools process as well. In February of 2013, probably most famous of all, she quickly immersed herself in the world of transportation to design and build standards as part of the Green Bay Corridor Working Group. Where she soon learned to bandy about terms like braided ramps and bent caps as knowledgeable as any civil engineer. You will always understand more than we probably really wanted you to. However, you served us very well, and right from the start, really, especially Diane and also Carla, you engaged, you learned, you did what was best for your community, you fought for the right thing, and for that, I admire and want to thank you. The TAM Board of Commissioners also extends their dedication with this resolution in your honor. So, thank you, ladies. We wish you well.
Thank you. being gentle with me about mentioning the recorder. That was not an easy time for you.
All forgiven.
Diane?
Right. I'm Brett Geithman, Superintendent of Larkspur Corte Madera School District. And this is Charles Schumacher, trustee for Larkspur Corte Madera School District. And we're here tonight to thank you for your service and partnership throughout the years. School district and community partnerships are so essential to have those healthy relationships and have those healthy collaborative efforts towards raising our students, but then also partnering with our families. And we just want to express our appreciation to you and thank you so much for everything.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Was that for you? Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Beautiful.
And before we see if any fellow council members want to say a few words, and then we'll break for brief cookies and brownies. I just wanted to highlight the names of some of the people on these certificates from people who send their regards who couldn't be here this evening. For Diane, we have a certificate from Congressman Jared Huffman. You're here. From the Police Council. Was that Gavin Newsom sends his regards, and Mary Jane Burke. And on Carla's side, Keen Simons wanted to make sure you received a letter from him as well, thanking you for his enjoyment of working with you, and Central Marin Police Authority again, and certificate of appreciation from the League of California Cities for your service to the Housing, Community, and Economic Development Policy Committee. Gavin Newsom and Jared Huffman.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm kind of speechless. I just so have appreciated over the last 16 and a half years of serving on the council, and I really love the town, and I'm looking around and see so many friends that I made, and friends including all the staff. And I'm so grateful for to have the opportunity to do it. I think that it's a beautiful town, and it's just getting better. And I want to thank especially Todd for really making the Intergenerational Center happen, and for all your support and everything that we've done as the council. And to Sloan and Diane and Jim and Bob, who's in here with us, it's just been really more than an honor. It's just been fun. I think we all share mutual respect, even when we don't agree on things. And I just feel that we've established deep friendships that I look forward to continuing after my term is up. Whenever the election department decides that it's over. But I just wanted to thank all of you so much, and to thank all of you for being here and for all these really thoughtful tributes. It's just leaves me almost speechless. But thank you all so much.
Thank you. Just to clarify about the elections department, it is so close, and they're still evidently counting provisional ballots. So if I'm correct, this isn't our last meeting. I don't know. We'll find out, I guess. But I want to thank everybody for the lovely tribute, the certificates, the flowers. When I first came on the council in late 2009, one of the first issues, at the first meeting or my second meeting, was regarding an algae bloom in one of the lagoons. And I thought, really, am I supposed to be an expert on algae? And it turns out that yes, I'm supposed to be an expert on algae. I'm supposed to be an expert on everything from flood control to disaster response to sewage and transportation and everything in between, and flower baskets. But that's what it's like in a small town. And I would encourage anybody who is at all inclined to consider maybe running for local office. It really is extremely rewarding. It's a lot of work, but it's work in the best possible way because you're always learning something new in some area that you never would have thought you'd need to know about. So it's challenging, but you get to also meet a lot of really great people. Not only do I cherish my friendships with my fellow council members, but the staff I've met, not the least Todd, you know, it's been really, really great working with you since you've been town manager and, of course, as a police chief before that. It's been exciting to see how we have worked to try to improve things. And I think of all the people, all our local residents who come to meetings and engage us, it almost always turns out positively on both sides because people care. People care about the local town, and it's just really, really rewarding to see. So thank you all and staff and my fellow council members for giving me a really great couple of terms here on the town council. I will cherish these years and the friendships and connections I've made, so thank you.
Okay, I want to say something. I can't match the eloquence of people, but I think the record should reflect my unhesitating, unreserved, unqualified gratitude and thanks, both personally and on behalf of the town. Here's the highest compliment I can give you. Our town is better because of your service. Thank you. That's all I got. Cookies? Oh.
I can't top a cookie call. But I'd like to thank Carla and Diane for working with me, you know, since I came on council in December of 15. You know, Diane, you've been very helpful working on finances for the town and teaching me stuff that I hadn't already known. And Carla, I think you have forgotten more about land use planning and zoning than I'm going to ever learn. And I really enjoyed being able to, call on you when I need institutional memory of, what happened in the past and so on. And don't be surprised if I contact you in the future and say,
Please
what
do.
is this? Okay.
Please do.
So, thank you.
Oh,
Thank you,
thank you,
Jim.
Thank you. And one
So
thing
what do we
about,
do? Do we make a motion for
Well,
take a break or something?
I just want to, yeah, we're going to,
Okay.
I just want to say that having served 16 and a half years, I don't quite know how to not serve, so please just allow me, call me for anything. I'm still here, and also special thanks to Rebecca,
Oh, yeah.
who just puts everything together. She remembers everything. Everything is done first class, and there's just nobody that could come close. Thank you so much, Rebecca.
Yes, thank you, Rebecca. Cookies.
Should I move that
Okay.
we take a break for how long? 15 minutes?
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Do you have to roll call for this?
No, hold on.
Okay, thanks again, folks, for just a great celebration. We're going to move on to our consent calendar, and the purpose of the consent calendar is to group the items together which are routine or have been discussed at another time and don't require further discussion. And they will be approved by a single motion. Any member of the town council, staff, or the public can pull an item. Before we vote whether or not to accept this, however, on our item 4.1.2, the subcommittee recommendations for appointments to the Planning Commission were Bob Bundy, Phyllis Metcalf, and Margaret Bandel. And then I'd like to announce that for the appointment for Planning Commission, those appointments were Sarah Elson and what? What did I just say? Planning, sorry, I didn't mean that. Planning was Bob Bundy, Phyllis Metcalf, and Margaret Bandel. And then for Park and Rec, it was Sarah Elson, Emily Janowski, who were both incumbents, and Alden Miles. And for the flood control, Stephanie Bennett, Nathan Blomgren, and Ramon Garcia. And that is it. So anyway, I just did want to make those announcements. And then I'll ask if anyone would like to move to adopt the consent calendar.
Well,
pull something. Okay.
Is anybody, did you ask?
Nobody, yeah.
Okay, then I'll move items 4.1.1 through 4.1.10.
Second. Oh, Jim can have it.
Councilmember Andrews?
Yes.
Councilmember Bailey?
Yes.
Councilmember Ravazio? Vice Mayor First?
Yes.
Mayor Condon?
Yes. And then we'll move down to the sanitary district items. That's 4.2.1, 4.2.2. And if anybody would like to pull either of those items, and if not, then I'll ask a move to adopt those.
Second.
Board Member Andrews?
Yes.
Board Member Bailey?
Yes.
Board Member Ravazio? Vice President First?
Yes.
President Condon?
Yes. Okay. Then moving along to our public hearings. This evening, we are going to have the hearing for proposed fiscal year 2018-2019 of the town operating budget and capital budget, proposed fiscal year 2018-19 budget for sanitary district number 2. And so, and we will have then resolutions accordingly. So, Daria, would you like to start off, please?
Yes, Daria's going to start. Just really quickly, Madam Mayor, members of the council, again, this is the second public hearing for the budget. Really, this is the third meeting we've had in budget discussions. This budget has gone before the Sales Oversight Committee, Sales Tax Oversight Committee, as well as the Flood Board and our other commissions and boards to provide us feedback. Something we heard from council at the last meeting was, again, the best we could in apples-to-apples comparison. We talked about the issues that we had of comparing previous years because we've changed our budgeting process. But Daria has spent a lot of time to try to do an apples-to-apples comparison going back to 2013 to 2019 to really give you a sense of how we're trending in each of the individual respective departments. There's a second document that she'll go over. You may be familiar with it. It goes back to our old budgeting ways where we went back and really evaluated reoccurring revenue to reoccurring expenditures. So we took out the one-time cost out on any given year and just really looked at the strength of our budget and on a reoccurring process. And so that goes all the way back to 1982-83. So you're going to get a nice perspective there to present. And then we gave you a 3 to 5 year look ahead. The third document will then be the spreadsheet that supports those graphs, those charts for you, and we'll talk about those as well. And so that's what I'm going to ask Daria to do now. Everybody in the room should have the same copies that are before council now, and we also will have it up on the screen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Town Council. As the town manager.
Oh, it's
okay.
there. She just needs, it needs
Oh,
to vent.
okay. Okay, as the town manager just indicated, there was a public hearing held on the operating budget at the last meeting. And since no changes were requested to the operating budget, no changes were made to that. But what was requested was this historical perspective. And so the document that's on the screen and that you have in front of you is it goes back to 2013, the 2012-2013 fiscal year. And this has been extracted directly from the old financial system, the Eden Systems software. And then I tried to add things together as best I could so that it would be as close a comparison as possible. And this is only the general fund. It's not any other fund. So just some of the things I'd like to point out on this document is that this is all of the revenues and expenditures, including one-time items. On the one of the next graphs that we see in a few minutes, I've taken out the one-time recurring items, but this includes all, the one-time items. This includes all items, and one-time items are items such as reimbursement for fire disaster or other disaster settlements, things like that. So this is everything. And the revenues and the expenditures were taken, as I said, directly from the software system that was previously used by the town. And then at the bottom, the transfers out were not actually recorded in the system. So I went through old work papers and got those and verified the accuracy by comparing the balances to the yearly audit. So some of the changes that are here is, as I said, one-time revenues and expenditures are taken out. Are included in here in this one.
In which one?
In this one, the one on the screen. Yeah, this includes everything. And with respect to the sanitary district, prior to the current fiscal year, 17-18, sanitary salaries and benefits were charged directly to the sanitary district. But now they're charged to the general fund, and the sanitary district reimburses the general fund. The recreation department, prior to the year 17-18, the current year, all recreation expenses were charged to various recreation funds. As of this year, all of those funds were combined into one, and certain recreation expenses connected with administrative costs are now charged to the general fund, including some salaries, benefits, building maintenance, that sort of thing. So there is a line item under expenditures called Recreation General Fund, and it only has items for the proposed budget year of 2018-19 and the current year of 18. Prior to that, you'll see in the section transfers out, you'll see there were transfers made to support the recreation fund. The insurance fund, you'll notice, for the proposed upcoming budget year and the current year, that there's, under transfers out again, there are transfers out to that insurance fund. Prior to that, each department had a certain part, or various funds, not each department, but various funds had insurance allocated to it. One of the biggest changes has to do with the CalPERS retirement costs. Beginning in the fiscal year 2015-16, CalPERS started charging an unfunded liability portion. Prior to that, it had all been charged as a percentage of payroll. And beginning in 16-17, the unfunded liability has been charged all to a department called non-departmental. Prior to that, it was spread out among each department. In 2016-17, the safety fund, side fund was paid in full. and that resulted in savings from that line item. And also, you'll see in that non-departmental line item is the pension stabilization fund. Also, retiree health insurance is in that non-departmental line item as of 2015-16. So at the very bottom, you'll see in that blue, every year, going back 5 years, there was an operating surplus. There wasn't any deficit. Some of it was due to one-time events, but this is the best comparison that we were able to come up with. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I just want to add one thing. I just got to give Daria credit. This was very difficult. I know it seems easy. This was difficult, and this has taken us really the last 12 months to really try to put this thing together. I want to point some things out to the council and the community. On the revenue side, we really took a conservative approach moving forward. But if you want to look at trends of how we trended from 2013 to 2019, the council costs are going way up, as you can see. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Okay. I want to point you to the non-departmental. That's the big one. What's in non-departmental? That's where really I identify. That's where we're proactive as a town. We're going to attack our unfunded liabilities. That's really the engine that's going to make us move forward, and it's really going to give us some decision points as you go through some of these future slides in upcoming years. If you look at police services and you go back to 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016, that $3 million line item, you could go back a decade, and that's what we paid for police services. It was really a successful consolidation, very financially just very successful. You're seeing a trend where it's starting to move up. It went from 3.1 to 3.3 to 3.5. That's going to continue for another 2 years. That is the unfunded CalPERS liability cost. So that is why you're seeing that trend. When you look at fire department, go back.
Go back a minute, Todd. What line were you talking about?
Oh, I'm sorry, police services.
Got it. Okay, sorry.
And so you're seeing that trend. So now go down to the next one on fire department and look at the fire department. In 2013, it was 4.9 million. And you could see that trend as the police authority, it starts to trend up, 5.3, 5.6. It levels off. 5.6 was our highest year. That trend, if we did not start sharing services with Larkspur, that would have gone at the same clip as police services. So do the math of where we would have been between 2016 and 2019. Now you start to see in 2017, we're sharing services. Now we've fully merged operationally. You saw that number drop to 4.3, and again, it dropped to 4.2. Very successful financially. One thing that's left out of here is the unfunded liability cost. We moved that into non-departmental. That's about a $700,000 number. So if you want to do apples to apples compared to that 5.6 moving forward, we've taken anywhere from $500,000 to $800,000 off of our books. And now that has allowed us as a town to put money towards unfunded liabilities. So we improved service, but we also did it by creating our own opportunity and then managing our unfunded liabilities in the future. Very successful. I give the council a lot of credit for that. Disaster preparedness, you can see in previous years we budgeted anywhere from 15 to 20,000. Last year was 43,000. This year you see zero. That has been moved to the sales tax measure. And so our budget this year, I believe, is $75,000 for this upcoming year towards disaster preparedness. And so that has been very successful. If you go to planning building, they over the last few years they've stayed steady. Our planning and building, as you know, they're very busy, and so as many desks as we have personnel, and so they're fully staffed, and you can see they've basically leveled off over the last few years. Engineering on the public works side, you can see where we had a town manager in the past that was an engineer. He also had 4 other titles. We saved a lot of money as a town. When he retired, I'm sorry, I don't have the same capabilities. We had to hire some personnel, and you see that difference. In 2016 to 2017, that was Dave Bracken moving into engineering. As he's retired, we've filled our staff. We've added an engineer. We've talked about it. And really, from a staff operations standpoint, I think the council agrees. We need to complete these projects we've been talking about for years, and we have that fully staffed team. We're excited to see what they can do, but that is why we've increased our personnel. On the maintenance operations side, you can see where they've started to, we've lowered costs. So in 2018 and 2019, we really took a zero budgeting approach, zero-based budgeting, and we kind of built it from the ground up. And we really evaluated how much contract staff should we have to full-time employees, what are we trying to accomplish, and how are we going to accomplish it. And so that is based on lowering overtime, being more efficient. We didn't cut any positions. We're not providing lesser of a service. We're actually more efficient, providing a better service, but saving taxpayer money. And so that's been a big process for us. I'm very excited to share that with you, that we've taken about $300,000 in savings and we've improved service. And so I give the maintenance team a lot of credit for that. And then lastly, I just want to point out the insurance fund. It's this one of the last line items under transfers out. You see the $669,000. Remember, we were self-insured in the past. And so if we had a lawsuit and the payout was $2 million, well, that $2 million comes out of our general fund. Now we're part of the Bay Cities risk pool. We share our risk. We pool our risk together with 19 to 20 other agencies in the Bay Area. And what that allows us to do is that we can buy and purchase insurance and share risks. So for instance, that same lawsuit, if we had to pay out $2 million, there's a retention limit up to $250,000 that we would pay, and then it would go to the risk pool. And in doing that now, we can do an actuary on an annual basis that evaluates what is our estimated workers' comp cost in claims for that year and civil litigation based on our experience over the last decade. And when we do that, you see the 669, that's our $340,000 in premiums that we pay to be in the risk pool, and the rest is what the actuary says that we'll pay in claims. So now we actually have a funded account. It's one of the issues we had with Central Marin Police Authority, where we didn't manage that the right way early on, and we had to fix that. And so we took that lessons learned and we put that into our budget moving forward. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions with this slide.
I have a question on the insurance fund. Are you saying that that amount is what our premium is, and then the rest is banked in just in case we have a claim?
That's correct.
So that could be then carried over to the next year if we don't?
That's correct, yep.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Can I say, ask a question? Let me just say something, even though there's a moment this later. I am really grateful that you went through this exercise. I know how impossibly hard it is to reconcile our Byzantine system with sort of the modern era, and I know that it's hard to backtrack it. It is, to me, fundamental to something I feel obliged to try to look at. So I am grateful to you for giving me the tool to begin to do that. I will follow up with one or both of you over the next couple weeks as I start to digest it, but this is the kind of information that allows, I believe, the five of us to ask smarter questions. So thank you. I'm profoundly grateful for putting it together. And Todd, you say this slide, the way when you asked the question, you solicited questions. That's because you don't want questions on the rest of the stuff?
We're going to walk you through because each one's different.
Okay.
So we're telling you a different
I have some
story.
questions about something deeper in the packet here.
Do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
Quick one. It's embarrassing to look at the mayor and town council line and see that it has more than doubled.
Yeah.
But we're still talking a very modest amount of money in the whole scheme of things. Is that because we started video recording the meetings?
No, a lot of that, I mean, a little bit of it is, but a lot of it is the fact that contributions to other organizations are in that line
Got
item.
it.
So it was the yellow bus.
Okay.
Item was $25,000, and then there was the homeless item that was $12,000, and some other contributions. That's most of that increase.
Okay, good.
But other small things.
So this is contributions to the community. It's
Yes.
not like we're lining our pockets. Thank
No.
you.
To that point, it's about a 50, so it really hasn't changed going back to
No.
2016. It's 51,000 for the
I know
council.
we haven't gotten a raise. And I wanted to second what Sloan said. I appreciate you going through this. I'm sure it probably wasn't easy, but I think it's really useful. Now we have it going forward. I also want to give a shout out to George Warman, who recently retired. He was our longtime director of finance. George was a treasure for this community. He had an amazing memory for all things numbers related that here in the town for decades. We miss George, but very glad to have you on board, and appreciate all your work putting together the budget. It's really been a very smooth transition for us on our side, so thank you.
Okay, are there any questions from the public? Okay, seeing none, we'll close it and bring it back. Okay, so then we'll go on to the next page.
Is that a different slide?
So the next one is, you're all familiar with this. This one, that's not it. This one is the slide that has been in our budget for the last few decades. And so again, this goes back to 82, 83. This is an analysis, again, of just reoccurring revenues to reoccurring expenditures, because it really gives us an idea of how healthy our budget is. And with that, I'm happy to turn it over to Daria.
Okay. All right. This slide goes back to 82, 83, and I did not update any of these old numbers. I started with 15, 16. And updated those, and I tried as best I could to go along the same way that it had been done in the past. You'll notice that these numbers don't match the slide previously, because these are taking out all of those sort of one-time things. So this is only the general fund, and the estimated actuals, of course, are just for this year, that the books aren't closed yet. So, and in 16, 17, I wanted to point out, because it looks kind of dramatic, on the other slide, there was it looked like there was a surplus of about $3.7 million. And then when you look on here, there was actually a deficit of $163,000. And that is largely because there was a transfer made from the Capital Equipment Replacement Fund of $3.7 million. So that that inflated the surplus. And the reason I guess that was done is because there were monies in various funds sitting around, and there was what was being referred to as an internal deficit. And so it was confusing, and so that money was just transferred back to the general fund, where it rolls up to anyway in the financial statement. So that's on that one. And as I think I mentioned before, the kinds of things that are taken out for considered as one-time sort of things are things related to, like in 17, 18, FEMA storm reimbursement, fire disaster reimbursement, both on the revenue and the expense side. Those are taken out, but they don't always match, because sometimes it crosses years before we receive reimbursement. There was a settlement having to do with one-time ERAF money that was taken out. So that's what is in 17, 18. We're still estimating a surplus. And of course, for all the years going forward, I didn't include any one-time costs, because I don't know what they might be. So did you want me to go over the other page so I can explain how I got here?
Yeah, something really quickly. This is really where the rubber meets the road for me. When I look at something, it's always been helpful to look at this chart, and it really starts if you go to the page where it shows 0506 to 910. That's if you go back all the way to 82 to present, that's our worst deficit. That's where we took the worst hit, our sales tax revenue, right? It was the worst. It was over $2 million over 5 years. So a lot of the work that the Finance Committee, the Council Finance Committee and staff has been working on is to build our reserves that speak to our worst financial crisis in the last 3 decades. We've done that. The next one is moving forward. Again, we've been healthy economy. We're doing well. The 16, 17, again, as Daria talked about, it was an internal deficit. That was where staff felt that the equipment replacement fund should be at $5 million. Back in those years of 08 to 13 or 08 to 11, that $2 million deficit was paid for out of the equipment replacement fund, bringing it from 5 to 3. We built an internal deficit, I'll call it, if that's the right language, and then we tried to pay that back. 18 months ago, working with the finance committee, the council finance committee and staff, we said, hey, look, let's wipe that out and let's have an equipment replacement fund. It's the technology fund. It's at 600,000, and let's put the rest into the general fund, write off our deficit. We're fine, and let's move forward. And that's really the backstory in a simplistic way, but it is confusing when you look at previous budgets. Moving forward again, Daria took a really conservative approach. She's going to show you actually on the worksheet now. It's the last page. Revenues, we flattened them out. We're going to just expect that things are going to happen with the economy. So we're expecting revenues to flatten out or reduce and our expenditures to go up slightly. And that's why you start to see in 21-22 and 22-23 a deficit. This is what I really want to point out to the community and the council that's important. We've taken a proactive approach. So when we get to 2022, we will have, if we go at our current expectations, we will have over $5 million in our trust fund for pension, our pension trust fund, and we'll have over $3 million in our OPEB liability trust fund. We'll have $8 million. So let's just say things happen the way we think they're going to happen. That's the mechanism now that gives us an opportunity if things happen the way they possibly could in the conservative approach. Well, then we have money there. We can offset that deficit in reoccurring costs. And I'll point out that staff is your staff is going to be very aggressive over the next 5 years to get those one-time costs, those grants, to be proactive. The example that I gave for public works maintenance, reducing cost by $300,000. We also reduced cost in Parks and Rec by $350,000. That's the type of thing you're going to continue to see with your staff to make sure that we don't have a deficit. But the point is, that deficit wouldn't even show up. It would probably be reversed in the other order if we weren't doing what we're doing, making our own opportunity and really banking over $1.3 million annually right now towards those pension trust funds. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Daria to go over that worksheet and how we came to those assumptions.
Okay. All right. On the revenues going forward, I predicted, well, not me, but the state said that they were predicting a mild recession beginning sometime in 1920. So I kept that in mind in regard.
The state's predicting a recession? The state's predicting a recession?
It said a mild recession. It was in one of the documents that I found in the state's.
Did you know that?
In the state's budget. I mean, it was on, I think it was, yeah, so that's what it said. It was in the state's budget. Yeah, it said mild.
So are we on the next slide?
Yes, on
Okay.
this
Okay.
page.
Thank you.
This page. Okay, so for the years going forward, the assumptions I used, for the next 2 years, I used 4.5% for property tax increases. On that other page that we went over in the beginning, very rarely did property tax the increase ever go below 4%, even in the bad years. Usually it was more than that. So I did 4.5% and for 2 years, and then 2 years at 4%. I left franchise fees flat for every year after the current year. I put sales tax up by 2% for 1920, and then just 1% after that for each year. And I left all other taxes and revenues flat, except for the money that the town receives from the sanitary district. I did increase that by 3.5% in 1920. 3% in 2021, and then 1% in the following years, to reflect both pay increases and also that more staff time may be spent on the sanitary district. In terms of expenditures, in the current year and the next year, 18, 19, 19, 20, a 3% salary increase has been included as a placeholder. Although that hasn't been formalized yet, and then 2% the following year. Also, step increases are included in every year, and then after 2021, only step increases, no other increase to the salary schedule. Okay, the unfunded liability line, that's a big line, the PERS line. It's increasing in both 1819 and 1920 due to the lowering of the discount rate. And those amounts that are on there, we have gotten from CalPERS. And you can see that it's quite a big jump from 1718 to 1819, about $250,000. And then again, the following year, after that, in the following year, the miscellaneous side fund will be paid off, and the side fund is an amount that PERS calculated when small employers were required to pool together, and that was the liability at that time, and it was required to be paid off. The safety fund has already been paid off, and the miscellaneous fund will be paid off in 2021. So that year's increase isn't as large as it might be without that, but it's still increasing because there's going to be a change in the amortization schedule from 30 years to 20 years, beginning in 2021. But it's only for the gains and losses for each year. It's not for the entire unfunded liability. So this is the best estimate I have. We had, prior to the change in that policy, we had an amortization schedule from PERS, and I called them and asked them if they could give us a new one, and they said, no, not now. You know, if you want to be conservative, you can increase the payments by 1%. So I did. So that's that line. Then that pension stabilization trust, that is the trust that was established in the current year in order to try to deal with the discount rate, which the town's actuary felt really wasn't properly adjusted by PERS, and in order to gain some control over rate volatility. The town took the savings from the safety side fund in 1718, that $366,000, and started a pension stabilization trust fund. And then for 1819, the amount is increased by the $320,000 that the town expects to receive from the gravel lot rental, and also for move $250,000 that had been previously used to pre-fund OPEB. So that line item is just assumed to be the same for all those years. Other benefits, that has been increased by the biggest increase in there is health and welfare, which for the 1819 budget, I estimated 6% because that was the increase the previous year, but we just received the rates and there's actually not going to be any increase this year, so there's more than enough there. So in the next years, I just increased it by 3, then 4.5, and then 2.5% based on what I could find, just reading about health insurance rates, which will probably change. And then retiree benefits, those are the health insurance benefits that are paid to retirees. That's the town pays for. The pre-funding OPEB, that's the OPEB trust that was discussed at the last meeting, was determined to move, that it would be best to move the $250,000 to the pension stabilization trust and continue pre-funding OPEB at a rate of $250,000. Outside services, I increased, all services and supplies except for JPAs, I increased at 3% in 1920 and then 1% after that. And every year, police was increased at 4% a year, and fire at 3%. And fire has been moved from salaries and retirement and all of those other lines into its own line, which sort of makes it look like salaries are decreasing by nearly half, but they're not. It's just been moved into police. Then you'll notice at the bottom where I have the estimated trust balances for OPEB and for the pension trust. that I calculated for the interest rate I used for the OPEB trust. I used 2.75% because the actuary said that if the town is not making its actuarially determined contribution, which it won't be if we're moving that contribution to the pension stabilization trust, we're not entitled to use as high an interest rate as we would if we were making that full contribution, and it's linked to a bond rate, so that's a very low interest rate. And then for the pension trust balance, I used 5.1%, which was the moderate growth rate over, I think it was either 3 or 5 years. I used that rate. So the point of having that down there is to show that when these increases from for pension and other things, start to become large and possibly have a deficit as a result, that there'll be these balances here, and the town can make decisions as maybe, not, to make less to the OPEB trust, or to perhaps start using money from the pension trust to pay its pensions obligations.
And just one last comment on that part. I know the Council Finance Committee is really focused on, I think 2022, if you look at this, is when it's going to happen, the first conversation for us, of trying to control our retirement cost percentage to payroll. And remember, right, when we first did our our retirement analysis last year, we were about 38%, which was low, a lot lower than a lot of other agencies. But it could spike up to 68% over the next 15 years. And so what we're trying to do is control that percentage in about 40 to 42%. And so with that analysis and this numbers, if it holds true, we'll be able to do that for the next decade and control the payroll cost.
And just one other thing. For 3 of the years 13, 14 through 15, 16, the numbers don't exactly match the other slide, because it's off about a total of about $98,000 between the 3 years, because it wasn't entirely clear to me on some of the town's records which funds were being affected, and I didn't want to change these that had been done before, so that's why that doesn't match exactly.
And that's it.
Okay, thank you. Any questions?
May I make a quick comment?
Sure.
Well, first of all, thank you. This is really great. I'm incredibly pleased that the town is only increasing expenditures, for instance, let's say from 16-17 to 2023, $3 million, but we will have banked by then over $8 million in the trust fund for OPEB and the pension trust fund. That's just really incredible, and I want to thank Todd for really being spearheading the effort to bank that money and put us in the position so that when CalPERS hits us with huge increases in the future, we can tap into these saved funds to help moderate the effect on our general fund. So thank you very much.
Okay. Any comments?
No.
Okay, any comments from the public? Yes. Ms. Stoliar.
Patty Stoliar, Casa Buena Drive, and I just wanted to tip my hat to the Sales Tax Override Oversight Committee. These are not people that you just tick off, yes, somebody is sitting in that seat having that role. But they really were the impetus, and especially Gene Greenbaum, to come up with the idea of removing the sewer tax from our property tax bill that really jettisoned Measure F to fly through in the election. So I just want to say thank you for your efforts, both Karen and Gene and the rest of the committee.
Thank you. And thank you again, Jean and Karen. And Ken. Okay. Yes.
I just have a question. Daria, now, and I want to study this a little more carefully, so I'll be following up in the next week or two, but just looking, I want you to just help me with one thing. maybe these dots can't be connected in this manner, but if you look, I'm looking now on the very last slide, the one that's on the screen. Under the estimated actuals for 2017-2018, the salaries were about 6.378 million, right? And then the following year in the proposed budget, it drops by about $3 million. Now, I noticed that the fire services doesn't appear in 2017-2018, but then in 2018-2019, bam, there's a 4.2 million. Okay. But maybe I'm oversimplifying it, but were the fire services included in the 2017-2018 estimated actuals? Because if they were, then shouldn't that be a closer connection? Shouldn't it be a $4 million discrepancy and not a $3 million when you go to the following year? Do you see what I'm saying? So if you take, right? I'm just for the audience to follow along what I'm doing here. If you look at the line item for salaries under expenditures, dead middle of the sheet, in the column for 2017-2018 estimated actuals, this says that for this year, last year, sorry. Wait, this year? Whatever. $6.378 million. That's how much in salaries is our estimated actual expenditure. Okay.
That's right.
We're estimating in our proposed budget for the upcoming year $3.2 million, $3.219 million, almost a $3 million less, $3.1 million less.
That's right.
Okay. And there's a lot of discrepancies between columns 2017-2018 estimated actuals and 2018-2019 proposed budget. So I get that. But the one I'm focusing on is fire services that appears for the first time in our proposed budget about 10 lines down, the row that simply says fire services. And for the first time it hits our general fund in our proposed budget for 2018-2019 of $4.2 million.
Right.
Okay. So can you just connect that for me?
Yes, I will try.
Okay.
Okay, it's expected that the Central Marin Fire Department.
Mike.
Yes. The Central Marin Fire Department is expected to be in effect in the
Got
next
it.
year. So these people's, the fire employee salaries will be on the Central Marin Fire Department's payroll, not the town's. And that's correct, as you noted, that's why the salaries are going down. The amount that
Well, no, but the point of the question is it doesn't connect perfectly.
Yeah. Okay, so that $4.2 million there, that is everything, not just salaries for the fire department. So in this book, which I don't know if you brought, salaries for next year for the fire department, there's a page called Central Marin Fire Department, which breaks down the $4.2 million, which is on the previous page. The salaries for the Central Marin Fire Department, Corte Madera's share of
Yep.
this salaries, which is half of the total, is nearly $2.9 million.
I see.
And then there are other costs. The retirement normal cost, Corte Madera's share will be $340,000.
I see. And so
that 4.2 million isn't all salaries. The one part
I got
that
it.
Corte Madera is keeping in that unfunded liability line is
Yes.
the fire department's unfunded liability, not the portion not the normal cost that is charged as a percentage of payroll, but the unfunded liability that has been accrued for past service. Corte Madera is keeping that in its budget, and it won't be reflected in the other budget.
And I think what you just explained, which I really appreciate, Daria, is that it's more complicated than just salaries. In other words, the fire services $4.2 million is an amalgamation not just of $3 million or $2.9 million in salaries, but also hundreds of thousands in retirement costs and health insurance and God knows what else. And that's why that's not a dollar for dollar.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
That's right.
Okay, any questions from the public? Okay, we'll bring it back. Oh,
No, the whole sheets are fantastic.
Jane, did you have a
Because I
question?
can now ask questions like that.
yes.
Dean Greenbaum from Casa Buena Drive. So I thought the consolidation of the fire department was I would venture to guess that it was done to save money. And I don't see that reflected in this budget the way it's been now explained. So I don't know how much money has been saved by the consolidation. It sounds like we're
going to be spending the same amount? I just would like to understand that.
It's a great question. So if we go to the first page, the first page in the attachment everyone has. So if we want to do apples to apples comparison, so this is salary benefits, it's the whole boat. It's to have a fire department, how much does it cost? So if you look on under expenditures on the first page, and you look at fire department, so you go to 2016, this 5.6 number right here, okay? That was that was Corte Madera Fire Department, fully staffed. That's what they cost in 2016. As we started to share services in 2017, you saw that number lower. If we didn't do that sharing of services, you could probably increase that by 3%, so it'd probably be somewhere at 5.8 million, 5.7 million. But we started to save money here in 2017. If you go to the next year, you see the big decrease. It went from 5.5 to 4.3. Now on that 4.3 number, what we did is we took out $700,000 of unfunded liability and we put it in its own line item so the public can track our unfunded liabilities. So if you compare the numbers, really that budget was about $5 million in 2018. But you can see we took $500,000 off the budget, right? That's the consolidation. So we saved $500,000, but you also saved 2 years of 3% increases. So really, your savings is about $500,000 to $800,000. Today, I'll just tell you it's $500,000. I'm happy with that. But really, it's probably closer to $800,000. That's the savings. Now you go to 2019, fully operational, fully staffed. To have a consolidated police agency, we saved again, instead of going up 3%, actually 5% like police services, if you look at the line above, we actually dropped 1.47%. Again, we dropped to 4.7 million. So that's a success. And what we did is we added 2 firefighters to Corte Madera and Larkspur staffing 24/7. Huge success. So that's where you see that. The complicated thing when we talk about these slides, they're telling us different stories. So the story that this is showing you now, and it's a great question by Councilmember Bailey. So here's fire. So here's fire salaries are in the 2017-2018 line item. So fire, again, the normal cost is here. Right now, compare it to normal cost, the second line, it's line 26. It went from 474 to 193. It's because we removed that normal cost down to the 4.2 million. Keep going. Other benefits went from 1.2 to 749. Same thing. Retiree, that stayed, that stays. What else do we have? And then we have a few other, maintenance costs, some of our other costs. We rolled it all into that 4.2 million that showed on that first page I showed you. This is just really looking at salaries as a whole, because when you look at our budget, it looks like our expenditures are going up from one year to the other a lot. And really the point is, over the last 3 years, our expenditures are actually lowering in the departments. They're lowering in our departments, and to Vice Mayor First's point, they're going to the non-departmental account, the unfunded liabilities. We're starting to attack some of our long-term issues, right? So these are lowering. This non-departmental, this is a catch-all. This is what that last page shows. It talks about all of our pension costs. We separated them out in a line item so our community can track what we're talking about. Before, we had everything rolled up into one account, and you couldn't follow, what those liabilities are. Now we're being more transparent. So it's a complicated thing, but I give Daria a lot of credit. I think she did a really good job of telling that story.
Okay. Any other comments? Yes, thank you. Mr. Spurson?
Yeah, Carl Spursum, Lakeside Drive. I just was thinking about the property tax assumptions, and the IJ front page story was, property taxes are flat. So we've experienced an enormous run. I'd love to sell my home for $3 million, but I think we're kind of at the top, my feeling. But I just would think through the property tax going 4%. If I heard you right, you got it built in kind of 4% forever?
Yes, I had 4% in the subsequent years. I saw that article as well that you saw. They were talking about the county as a whole. The county has started giving each of the cities their own estimate each month. They do it once a month, and the most recent one I have, which I think was at the end of May, is actually something like 5.23%, even more than I had put in here. and had a meeting at the finance directors meeting, I think also in May or maybe in April, with and a representative of the county was there, and he was saying that he thought, when I was talking to him, that 5% actually would be safe for the next upcoming years. But yeah, there's no way of knowing for sure. Yeah, I just looked at historically. It didn't look like ever it had really gone much below 4%.
Well, it probably has at some point. I just, a straight line 4% forever, just kind of,
Maybe,
just as a
okay.
forecasting person, I'd almost kind of want to see a downside scenario.
Okay.
Maybe it goes flat for 3 years
Okay.
at some point, so just a thought, thanks.
Okay.
Or what's the Prop 13, 2% max?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, except for turnover. Turnover is what's driving.
Right,
yeah.
but I'm just saying,
Yeah, the increase,
for the
yeah.
far future, just assume 13.
Okay, Daria, thank you so much. Now, the next one is the town appropriation.
Well, we need to approve.
Well, I was going to have you do it all at once, but we
Okay,
can,
okay. Do you want me to do the appropriations limit or do the
Doesn't
capital
matter.
Or I'm
budget first?
happy to make a motion if you want.
okay, if you wanted,
Sure.
You know,
yes, sure.
before you
This
make
would
the
be
motion,
to
can-
approve
Um,
a resolution.
Do you mind, can I make one comment before she makes the motion?
Absolutely.
So Daria and Todd, thank you both. It is outstanding work. And I like the conservative presumptions and that you're kind of telling it like it is. The recurring expense is a good, smart way to sort of focus. And I recognize that the state's presumptions and projections can hinder you a little bit in the way these things will actually come out. But if we know based on that conservative reasoning right now that in the not too distant future, as I get older, time seems to be going faster, but in the 2021 and 2022 and then the following year, if we know right now that we have a trend coming up that's $100,000 in one year and then another 238 the following year, I don't want you to change your presumptions. I don't want to change your conservative perspective. I don't want you to change the forecasting. But then right now, we should try to find a way to bring that at least back to par. That means beginning to project appropriate cuts so that 5 years from now, we don't have a projected 100 or 200 grand budget. It's our job, our decision. We will authorize cut things that are going to be a hard decision, but for sure, I don't think any of us would ever knowingly authorize running our town into below zero. So if we know right now, which you've done a great job, that this is going to be coming up, even though it's premised on kind of crappy data from the state but whatever, then right now we need to project if this goes according to plan, how are we going to make up? Because I don't want in 2021 to be $100,000 underneath, and in 22 230. So if that means we got to reduce whatever, that's I want you to come up with options for us to authorize you to make those cuts. That would be my suggestion. Yeah.
May I respond to that? I think that's exactly why we have the Pension Stabilization Trust and the OPEB Trust, because we know that the CalPERS required payments are skyrocketing every single year. So we can buffer that by tapping into the trust. And by year 2021, by 2021, 2022, we will have over $8 million sitting in those two trusts. So if we need to tap into 200,000 to balance to help mitigate those huge CalPERS hits, that's exactly what those funds are for.
But Diane, isn't the reason why we want to set up that whopping trust is to have the funds to pay off those retirement liabilities, not to balance our regular operating fund?
No, it is precisely to balance, because CalPERS is going to be hitting us with huge increases for a series of years, and then it's going to come down again. So we're paying in now so that when we reach the top of the big hits, we can tap into the trust fund to bring those down a little bit and buy us a little time until the CalPERS hits, the CalPERS required payments come back down. And maybe Todd can speak to that, but that's how I recall the conversation going when we were talking about setting up these trusts.
That's exactly right. So it's over the next 10 years. And again, we could probably do another presentation with some analysis with it showing charts, because the visual's worth everything. But really, when you look at the next 3 years, you're taking $250,000 hits every year because of the pension to get to 7%. And so as the Vice Mayor said, what we're going to do, that's why we're trying to bank our money, so to speak, to get it to a certain amount and make some investments on it, and then keep that payroll rate of what we pay for retirement per dollar per payroll from 38 and keeping it at about 42%. That'll allow us to fully balance our budget for the next decade. And there'll be no deficit. And so we just haven't projected that and showed that right now because we're showing it differently. We're investing in the stabilization trust. I think for this council and incoming councils, that's exactly the conversation to be had of how are we going to handle that. I'll also point out that you're exactly right. What you said of if you know you're going to have a deficit, you should plan on it. And so we look at reoccurring revenues to reoccurring expenditures. And we started with all of our departments. So we have a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C. And this is what it's going to look like, and so we need to start, we're going through that as staff. It's painful, and the goal is to not freeze positions and not eliminate service. It's to maintain it. How do you do that? Public Works maintenance and Park and Rec are the perfect example of that, and the consolidation of fire. That's exactly what we're doing, and then we're going to keep doing it throughout the entire town. So we hear you loud and clear. I'm excited to have Daria and give you the tools and the visuals in this next year to really have that conversation, because we want to plan for 2022.
Okay, thank you.
That's it.
May I ask a
Yes, sure.
Todd, under consent calendar, we approved the purchase of a financial model for pension. Will that provide the ability to graph out some of these costs so that we can visually look at what the CalPERS hits are going to look like and what it might look like if we mitigate that by tapping into some of the pension benefits? And I'm asking about a graph similar to what we got from Bartell Associates, who is our actuary.
Yeah, so that's correct, Vice Mayor. So it's called GovInvest, and we should have that up and running in August. And they put in all of our assumptions, our current status of our town. And so I know Carl Spurgeon, for instance, has brought this up when we give raises. Hey, how does that impact long-term liability? Well, in August, we're going to be able to say this is what 1% looks like, this is what 2% looks like, 3%, and this is how it affects us today and 30 years from now. You'll be able to see that live, and we'll be able to give different assumptions as we talk at the dais and as we work through it. So we'll have that in August, but we can, to your point, Madam Vice Mayor, yes, any way to evaluate your unfunded liabilities, this can do it. And so it'll be critical as a tool for us moving forward.
Okay, thank you. So then, should we go back for approval of Resolution 27/2018?
I'll move to approve Resolution 27/2018, adopting the town operating budget and the town capital improvement program budget for fiscal year 2018-2019.
Second.
Councilmember Andrews?
Yes.
Councilmember Bailey?
Yes.
Councilmember Ravazio? Vice Mayor First?
Yes.
Mayor Condon?
Yes. Okay, and then we'll move to the next item, which is establishing the town appropriation limit for 2018-2019.
All right. The appropriations limit, which is also known as the GAN limit, is a requirement that's been in the law since the 1970s that limits the amount of revenue that each city or public agency can spend. The increases are determined by population growth and cost of living increases, and there's a spreadsheet showing that the town is well below its limit, $27 million leeway, and just to let you know, this spreadsheet was developed in conjunction with an auditor that I worked with at a previous job, and I sent it to our current auditor to approve as well to make sure it was correct.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions to staff? Okay, seeing none, any questions from our audience? I'll close it and bring it back.
Move to approve Resolution 28/2018, establishing the 2018-2019 appropriations limit.
Second.
Councilmember Andrews?
Yes.
Councilmember Bailey?
Yes.
Councilmember Ravazio? Vice Mayor First?
Yes.
Mayor Condon?
Yes. Okay, now we're going to move along to 5.2, and this is sanitary district public hearing. And
I'm sorry, Madam Mayor, I still think we have the CIP really. As
wait a
part
minute,
of
what
the-
did I miss?
The CIP
Never went.
is still part of the operating budget. Is it? Is
Isn't it one
5.1?
motion? It was part of the
Oh, you
motion.
approved it, okay.
Yeah.
We just
Then
didn't
I'm gonna
go
let
through
it-
the detail of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you want to go through the detail, we can.
It's up to you. I'm okay, okay.
Okay, so the sanitary district.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. I'm sorry, thank you, board members. So I have our engineering team, RJ and Jared are here. Since you don't have any questions on the CIP, that's a good start. I want to, really, there's been no changes to the sanitary district except for one, and I think it's really a conversation that's hit home with me. I think staff, we are having a healthy discussion about the sanitary district. And so here's the story of the sanitary district from a big picture town perspective. We have a lot of projects. We have a 5-year CIP. You can see the things that we need to get done in this budget. We're approaching about $9 or $10 million in our fund, and we're about to really aggressively, at a $3 million rate a year, improve our infrastructure. The lateral policy was a big deal, ordinance, to get that passed. But what I'm going to say is, we started with a $25,000 fund potentially to help residents, and then the conversation with council, with the board was, well, what about the big picture ones that are town initiated? Some of these projects, that 25,000's gone with 3 residents. What should we do? And that's been the healthy discussion with staff. And so this, in hearing the comments from last meeting to now, that's been doubled from 25,000 to 50. I'm just going to tell you from the town manager's perspective, as I appreciate the district manager's approach on it, he's trying to maintain a very expensive program over the next 50 years. And so he's doing exactly what we want him to do. I'll tell you, as a town manager, I feel like we have garbage rates that are gonna be increasing coming up. We just gave back a property tax, and we promised the community that we're going to work through each one of our taxing measures and have a nice, thoughtful conversation. And I think this is one of those where we have the opportunity over the next 3 or 4 years to possibly flatten some cost or to possibly help our residents with some of our programs. And so to really maybe look at the lateral part and put a healthy amount in there for the next few years, as we know we have some major projects, and help our residents with some of those. And to really, as Mr. and Mrs. Wolford pointed out, we really haven't had clarification on what our stance is as a town. And so maybe it's an opportunity for us in the next 60 days when we come back to you to develop that. But I want to tell you that right now it went from 25 to 50. I feel like it should be more. Honestly, I think you should put $500,000 in there and just roll it over from year to year as we develop our policy. I think that's appropriate for consideration. But other than that, the CIP is really fixed based on the things that we have to accomplish over the next 5 years. We know that. And so with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. And again, I have my engineering team present.
I have a question. The lateral ordinance, when we passed it, I thought, I vaguely recall there was a couple of motivations. One is we're basically required to, by outside agencies in every other sanitary district in the that's part of Central Marin has done the same. But the functional reason, I thought, was because we believed that there was a lot of water intrusion into our system. And if that's the functional reason for doing it, would it make sense to think about whether we could accelerate at least examining all the laterals so we know how bad the problem is? So to make that not a sort of a sanitary district function as opposed to individual homeowners just sit there and say, okay, we're going to go through the Christmas Tree Hill, see how bad they are. Madera Gardens and just have the town systematically do the initial inspections rather than waiting for folks to build or so on. I'm just,
Yeah, before I had the A-team in, they can jump in here at any time, but that's something that the district manager and I have been talking about over the past few months of, is there a way to evaluate smoke test and to test our infrastructure to see where our weak points are? But it's quite the process, and if you guys want to jump in and speak to that, RJ?
So the ordinance itself does have some additional triggers that currently aren't in place. And I think there will be a substantial increase in the amount of inspections we're doing and to reduce the infiltration into the system. And I think partly what Todd was speaking about having a program that might be able to cost share some of those, that's hopefully to offset some of those burdens to some people that, they won't be expecting. But the ordinance itself.
I'm sort of pushing aside the ordinance and just saying, from a functional standpoint, don't we want to get all the laterals inspected sooner rather than later?
Sure, the balance would be
And the question is how much it
the
costs.
more we inspect, the more we're bringing costs to residents who might be caught by surprise by the results of the inspection. So just something we want to consider.
That's I think it's a really smart line of questioning, Jim. Is the cost of the inspections themselves, is that an expensive proposition? I'm wholly ignorant on this. This is something in the order of 6 figures per year, 7 figures. I mean, how big a number is it to inspect sewer laterals?
I think it's a couple $100
Per lateral?
Yeah.
Just to do the inspection?
Right.
I'm not sure how an absence of information is helpful to us. I like how sensitive you are about the idea that we ought not to surprise residents. But in my own view, the absence of information is never helpful ever. But there is a price, and if it's too expensive, it's probably not worth it. I think it's a good idea to seriously consider being a little more proactive about at least determining whether we have a real sewer lateral problem or not. You're right, there are more triggers, that's a good word for it, in place now with the new ordinance that would oblige a homeowner to have to figure this thing out if they want to sell their property or you discover it happenstance or whatever. But I agree with the concept. Maybe we ought to be actively trying to figure it out. But I agree with Todd's overweening concept here. If it's too expensive, I don't want to do it either. I don't know. Anyway, those are just comments. They're not direction.
May I pipe in on that?
Of course.
Pipe in on it, get it? As the town of Corte Madera's representative on the Central Marin Sanitation Agency, I want to point out that reducing I&I, inflow and infiltration, is a big priority for our town, not simply because we are required to under our responsibilities under the CMSA NPDES permit, and I'm sorry for all the acronyms, but because all that water that gets into the system through cracks and separations winds up in the water treatment plant, and we pay to have that water treated.
Right.
So, that being said, I cannot see that it would make sense for the town to be responsible to inspect laterals on private property. I just did a quick calculation. I don't even know how many homes we have in the sanitary district. I know in the town of Corte Madera, we have about 2,400, 2,500, I think. Something like, or is it more? So in all of the district, you think what, 4,000?
4,600.
Okay, let's say 3,600. So if a sewer lateral costs $200 to inspect, that's almost $750,000 just to inspect. We would have to go on private property to inspect, and there's the potential for somebody to claim that we damaged their lateral by sending a camera up there or something else. We can't do that. We just really can't. It is up to the homeowner to be responsible for their property and their sewer lateral. I'm guessing almost everybody's sewer lateral that is more than, 25 years old, probably needs to be repaired or completely replaced.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, there's an educational side to this, which is probably be useful for the public as well, and people like me, who I feel obliged to try to do what we can for the future, and this is a common sense problem I don't think I've fully twigged to, so I appreciate the information.
Most of the homes in Corte Madera were built in the 1960s or earlier. And if they haven't had their lateral replaced or lined, they will likely have problems, which would be triggered by one of the triggers that is in our ordinance.
Okay.
And I would be really nervous about the town going in there inspecting, because that means sending a camera up there or something, which could loosen the walls of a cracked, terracotta or whatever. I don't know what the pipes are made of, but what are the pipes made of?
Many of the old pipes are clay pipe.
Clay, yeah. So that would really make me nervous.
So, Dan, I agree with the concept that it may be impractical to do this too hastily. I don't agree that a reason not to do it is because the mere doing of it may bring to light that all of our pipes are in crap condition. That would be the sort of information that, if it's true, I'd rather know now than as the pipes wholly deteriorate and become disastrous.
Well, if it gets to that point, the homeowner will know, because they will have backups. And they will have to have the plumbers out there to route out and clear out the tree roots. I think it's in the town's best interest to go at this methodically by addressing neighborhoods as the sewer main is addressed, which is kind of what the plan is.
No, I agree.
And then we address the laterals. I personally think we're gonna need a lot more than $50,000 in a budget to help out homeowners that are surprised by this or might not have the financial resources to be able to pay all of that. So rather than spending a ton of money inspecting, let's have some money to help out the folks who are in a tight bind and maybe can't afford to.
Okay, I'm with you.
With the laterals, especially requiring that there be some inspection with a real estate turnover, thank you, that I think that's going to be, that should satisfy it, because if all of a sudden that whoever's inspecting these laterals notice some sort of defect, but it hasn't completely failed, you don't know where they're going to draw the line. And one of these, an average replacement is about an $8,000 job.
Right.
And you don't know who goes out and inspects if they're going to, notice some little possibility, because they don't want a claim against them if it should fail. So I do think that it should be the homeowner's job to have that inspection done. It would be very, it's kind of altruistic to have the town do it, but I think it's going to really backfire.
Okay.
And the money, whatever money we have, that can be used in some sort of a loan program or financial assistance program.
What would be helpful for staff, as we have the healthy discussion, it'd be helpful for some direction from the board of what would you like to start that at? Doesn't mean we have to spend it. We still have to work on the policy, but what would you like us to start with in that account? Again, it could be carried over from year to year. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, they had a while back, it was a few years, I remember they ran the closed circuit TV or whatever it was along the Bayside Trail, and found that there were breaks there and replaced some of the pipes along there. I think that maybe if there's an area of record that has been having a concentrated amount of failure, that then maybe there should be some sort of inspection at the town's end of it, you know, rather than going to
No, but
each
I think Todd's
individual.
question is, how big do we want the assistance program to be? Isn't
For
that what
instance,
you're
yeah,
asking?
at the end of the year, we have a couple of large projects that are town instituted that are going to trigger this for us, and it's multiple households.
Well, I guess what I would suggest is, let's look at what Ross Valley has done for their program, because I think they have a grant program, but also, in effect, a loan program. You know, and
Right.
Yeah.
mentally, I'm viewing it as sort of like a PACE program for sewers.
Right, and Las Colinas has one in
Okay.
place, too.
And so that will tell you sort of the dollar amount per parcel.
Yeah.
Potential. Then you can sit there and say, okay, how many parcels do you think we might affect? And that will get you a round ballpark number that we can start budgeting for.
But if I had to pick a number off the top of my head, I'd say 250.
I wouldn't argue with that.
Well, just keep in mind that it's going to be a lot more than the 50. I'm guessing 250 might work, but take a look at Ross Valley. I totally agree with Jim. Yeah, I just, they're losing their general manager. He's moving on, so just getting the data out of them might not be super easy.
You can start another feud with them.
Oh, maybe they
Does it-
can hire what's-his-name back.
Well, the civilized one left. Will it be on parole?
Okay, let's move along.
But I do just want the community to know that this board is thinking about the town as a whole on taxes and how we and we're being sensitive, and it's a thoughtful process. It's just not one thing on its own. We're looking at universally our town and how we charge people our fees and our taxes. And I think we have an opportunity here, and I think that the board is directing us to do so to help.
Yeah.
So I think that's good. Okay, thank you.
And I think, too, if we establish a policy of helping, I think it's going to trigger people's awareness that there could be a pending problem with their own property, so. Does that work for you guys? Okay, and we'll open it to the public. Yes. Ms.
Hi.
Gerbosi?
Karen Gerbosi, 111 Parkview Circle. Two things. I went to, or at least two, I was in contact with one of the people that is a primary real estate agent in our homeowners association. We have 148 homes over in Parkview Circle, which is condos, townhouses, and PUDs, so it's a little bit of everything. And they were like, this is a great idea. So as a real estate agent, they're saying this is pervasive throughout the county. The second thing is to figure out any kind of numbers on what's going on. If basically the whole rest of the county is already on board with this drill, there shouldn't be a lot of inventing information or experience on it. I mean, we can look at what communities are most like ours as far as, sharing stuff on Bayside and different parts of the real estate and saying, what have their experience been and what are their practices, and maybe even talk to some real estate people that sell homes in those kinds of communities and see, what their experience has been. So there should be, even if it's borders on anecdotal, there should be a lot of information out there about how this is going on. And then I think the third thing is, and I said there's only going to be two, is that speaking to the couple that was here before, is that it's important, I think, to make sure that our citizens know that we're basically the last community in the county to get on board with this. So it's not like some sneak attack and some new thing that we've invented. And I don't know how other counties are about it either, but certainly in Marin, if we're the last community to be doing this, it's everywhere, and there's a lot of experience about it. There's a lot of people doing inspections. There's a lot of data. Thanks.
Thank you. Bob?
Bob Bundy, Golden Hind Passage. I was under the impression that the only time the homeowner was required to do this was a major remodel, adding another bathroom, things like that, or when things backed up so badly that it couldn't be roto-rooted out and they had to replace it themselves. I wasn't aware that it was a requirement on the sale of your home to have it inspected and fixed. Am I mistaken on that? Is that a requirement?
Yes.
That was, yeah.
You're going
Okay.
to refi, sell, so it's major real estate transactions as well as emergency situations and major upgrades.
Yeah, we're the last. Everybody else.
But so
enforces
we,
this.
we are in the process of enacting that on the sale of the home to require the homeowner to have it inspected?
Yeah.
Well, I would support that. I think that's the way you get, more of these laterals done, and that we should do that. The other issue is when the sewer main is being replaced, and you're tearing up the street to do that, that's the time that we should encourage or require the homeowners to check their laterals that go into the sewer main, because that's a lot of the cost of it for the homeowner is when you tear up the street, you have to tear up the street to get to clean out your lateral or reline it. And so having a requirement that when the sewer main is replaced, the homeowners sort of have to buy in, and they're going to be able to buy in for a lot less cost if they do it at that time. Thank you.
Yeah, just to respond to that, Bob, a capital improvement project is one of the 3 triggers that requires investigation of the lower laterals.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
so ripping up the street, that'll trigger it.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, we'll bring it back to the council.
May I
Yeah.
say something? I want to thank Karen Gerbosi for pointing out that we are the last town to adopt a sewer lateral ordinance. So as we are talking about kind of, that process, we need to remind people of that and that this is a really responsible thing we're doing with the sewer laterals. As for the amount that's going to go into the fund to help out individual homeowners who are unexpectedly trigger a lateral repair, so the grant program, I want to remind the council that with the aggressive capital investment plan for over the next few years, there are going to be potentially a lot of sewer laterals just over the next few years that are going to be triggered. That's why I think we need to make sure we have enough money in there. But that will be a discussion for another time. So anyway, I'm ready to make a motion unless anybody else wants to talk.
I'll second to 18.
Okay, that was my motion.
I have to get into the proper frame of reference. Board Member Andrews.
Yes.
Board Member Bailey.
Yes.
Board Member Ravazia. Vice President First.
Yes.
President Condon.
Yes. At this time, and I'm going to ask our attorney if I can do this. I wanted to just reopen the 5.1.1, just so that we don't get called on the carpet at a future time. That we have this part for the capital improvement program budget that we approved, but I would just like to have everybody just take one look at the projects here to see if there is any reconsideration. How do we do that?
My recollection is it takes a 2/3 vote to reconsider an item once it's been voted on. So I think the initial discussion would be whether the council wishes to reconsider the item. So you would initially have a discussion about that, and that would take I believe it's a 2/3 vote under the rules to do that. I think it would be 2/3 of the full council, so that would be, 4 members, I believe.
Okay,
So if all 4 of you agree to do that, then you can do it.
Fine, I just didn't
You may want to
it
conclude the
be-
board, are we done with the board business yet?
be cons-
Perhaps conclude the board business and then return
To
as a
return
city
to it?
council.
Okay, thank you. We'll do that. Okay, so we'll return to the sanitary district hearing items. And the next one is the appropriation limit, or, well, no, before, we don't want to do the same thing again. Is there any further discussion about the capital improvement program?
No, we already did that,
budget?
right?
Yeah, we
Any
heard
other comment? Okay, then we will move on to the sanitary district appropriation limit.
For your approval.
Okay. So any discussion? Okay, anybody from the public? Close it to the public?
So moved.
Second.
Board Member Andrews?
Yes.
Board Member Bailey?
Yes.
Board Member Ravazio? Vice President First?
Yes.
President Condon?
Yes. Okay, then, just in case it was an oversight, if there is any type of discussion on, starting on page 7, of the capital improvement projects. And if everybody was satisfied with the vote, then we'll just resume.
Satisfied.
Satisfied.
Satisfied?
Okay, so then we will just move on to our business items. The first one is consideration and possible adoption of Resolution 24/2018, approving the Transportation Authority of Marin's final half-cent transportation sales tax renewal expenditure plan as approved by the town board.
And thank you for being here so late.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you to
Oh.
make you sit
I know.
through all of this.
Do you want another brownie or something?
I don't have a sewer lateral in Corte Madera, so I
Okay.
just wanted to assure you of that. But our general manager might with Marin Transit, so please keep that in mind with your gentleness in considering this presentation.
And welcome again, Ms. Steinhauser.
I'm Diane Steinhauser with TAM. No problem. Thanks for the opportunity. I know this is a busy time of year, and we're experiencing this at more than just your council, so I appreciate the chance to spend a few minutes explaining to you some of the changes in our sales tax expenditure plan from last time I was here. So we were here, I believe, in April 3rd. Thank you. Very good. And we explained a long process that we've been engaged in to consider a renewal of the half-cent transportation sales tax in Marin County. We got into quite a bit of detail about the final sales tax renewal expenditure plan. It's exhibited right here with local bus transit, highways and interchanges, local streets and roads, and school safety and access, explained in a bit of detail, and we'd be glad to pull up more detail in this presentation if need be. But the reason I'm here this evening is to seek your approval of the final transportation sales tax renewal expenditure plan. In accordance with state law, code under which TAM is created as a joint powers authority, we do need to receive 50+% of the cities or towns representing 50+% of the incorporated population. And majority voted the Board of Supervisors in order to proceed with considering putting this renewed sales tax on the ballot. So that's what we're doing. We're out to all of the 12 local jurisdictions. We've received approval from 8. We got a unanimous approval today from the Marin County Board of Supervisors on this plan. So we're hoping that you will consider it favorably as well. We have a pretty detailed process to date. We actually started in late 2016 with looking at whether we should raise the tax or extend the existing. After forming a 24-member expenditure plan advisory committee, they made a recommendation back to TAM in December. Best to extend the existing tax at this time. Let's move the pieces around on how the money's spent. So that's pretty much what they developed over a 6-month process, about 10 meetings or so, looking at all the needs in Marin. Interestingly, the expenditure plan committee received presentations from all the various partners, transit and others. And the total sum of needs for transportation were about $45 million a year. But we have $27 million a year, and so they scaled down all of that into a comprehensive plan, which was explained to you back in early April. The part of the process we're at now is to explain what changes we made based on your input last time I was here, and to kind of show you those changes. And again, to seek your approval. The TAM board approved the final plan unanimously on April 26th. So I'm not going to read all of these. I'm going to touch on a few of these comments and recommended changes and how they were incorporated into the final plan. First of all, we're going to retain our Independent Citizens Oversight Committee. They report directly to the public. They produce an annual report right here. They hold public hearings, and their job is to make sure they track and report how the funds are spent. This is very important with respect to adhering to the expenditure plan. Note the expenditure plan will be included in the ballot, so that the detail that you see in here is the same detail the public is going to be viewing and will be assured how the money is spent going forward. The COC's meetings are Brown Act noticed and open to the public, and we often do have members of the public that come and talk to our Citizens Oversight Committee directly. They have access to our independent audit, and again, they publish the annual report and do a very good job at that. So another change that I wanted to briefly talk about has to do with local street and road funding. We are increasing the amount of funds sent to each local jurisdiction as a subvention from the tax. It's at 22% of the total amount collected, distributed amongst all 12 jurisdictions by a formula that 50% population, 50% road lane miles. The increase in funds coming to Corte Madera, you can see here, from $112,000 annually to $186,000. It's up to you how those funds are spent. We opened up eligibility with the use of these funds in the final plan. You can spend them on flood management with respect to planning. You can spend them on congestion relief on local roads, including school bus service if you so choose. Alternative fuel infrastructure, including electric vehicle chargers, municipal fleet costs, and bike and ped facilities have always been eligible. And of course, paving and rehabilitation of local roads. So we've got a lot of positive comments from local jurisdictions on that broad eligibility. This is the one fund where you send me a bill in June and I send you a check in July. We do track and require an annual report on how the money was spent. The other thing I wanted to just mention briefly is crossing guards. So if you remember, we had quite a bit of concern in the February-March timeframe at TAM on having to cut crossing guards. We have no federal Safe Routes funding anymore or state Safe Routes funding. So these funds are the funds that really hold up our Safe Routes to School program. The Safe Routes program is education, as well as pathway type projects and crossing guards. We've increased the crossing guard funding in the final plan to save any and prevent any cuts in guards. There's one or two in Corte Madera that will now be kept from being cut because of this, as well as our continued work with schools, including the schools here in Corte Madera. Another change that I wanted to mention is that the TAM board was interested in being able to review the plan to make sure that how we're investing the funds holds up over time. So there will be every 6 years a review of the expenditure plan, and the TAM board will have the option of making amendments. The amendment process is very strict. It means coming back to you and getting approval from our cities and towns. And we have had this type of amendment process in our current sales tax, but have not had or needed the opportunity to make amendments. The flexibility and variability of the plan elements has enabled us to keep expending funds on current needs. But this was a strong interest to the board to be able to revisit the plan with a 30-year expenditure plan, that becomes very important. I talked a little bit about flexibility in local road funds. The other element that came to our attention, if you remember, was the need for us to increase funding for electric vehicle support. Rather than do this through the measure, with a set aside, we did two things. We looked at categories within the measure that could, where funds on electric vehicles could be expended. So we broadened, as I mentioned, local street and roads, transit capital, as well as a small category called sea level rise, where the receivers of those funds can choose to spend them on electric vehicle infrastructure and electric vehicle fleets. But most importantly, the TAM board, in a parallel action in April, dedicated over $1.1 million over the next 3 years from another fund source, which is our $10 vehicle registration fee. You can see here our coordination, planning, and assessment that we have kicked off with a very comprehensive clean technology advisory working group. And we can talk in a little more detail if needed as to what that group is coming up with in terms of electric vehicle fleet, electric vehicle chargers, and marketing and education on the benefits of electric vehicle. As some of our future expenditures, we will be returning to the TAM board in the November-December timeframe with a final program covering at least the start of this $1.1 million expenditures over the next 3 years. Let me also mention that the goal of the expenditure plan was expanded to include the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. Almost 80% of our expenditure plan is dedicated to non-automotive travel. So between transit funds, safe routes to school, local streets and roads, and complete streets, as well as even the highway projects that are carpool lanes and bike path oriented, we've got quite a bit of investment in GGE reduction and sustainability. The last thing I wanted to talk about was another issue that has come to our attention, which is school transportation. Can we do more, and what are we doing in this plan? Let me just mention that this plan will enable Marin Transit to continue serving 13 public schools, all public high schools, and several middle schools in Marin. 100% funding of direct service to these schools. 2,500 daily youth trips taken off of our congested roadways. Also, Marin Transit will continue the Youth Pass program, where over 2,000 annual passes are sold, mostly in our communities of concern, with youth that qualify for free and reduced lunches. And those passes are distributed that, again, enables children to use the bus to get to and from school. In response to the request for more yellow school bus service, Marin Transit and TAM are going to continue to seek new revenues. I have a very exciting announcement on the next slide about that. Marin Transit's going to be looking at a mechanism, a process, to normalize funding amongst the school districts, cities, and towns over the next year. And they have named yellow school bus service as a top priority in their 10-year plan, and TAM has confirmed that as well, with particular attention to the congestion relief that can be provided in corridors that have yellow school bus service. Finally, the TAM board
Diane,
next
I'm sorry,
week.
can I interrupt for one second?
Sure.
Could you just, could you just explain that to me? What does it mean, a mechanism to normalize funding?
There is a, I'm going to ask Nancy to come up and add to this if I don't quite get it right.
I just mean, I don't know what that.
Yeah, well, right now there's an array of both measure funding, local city funding, school district funding for yellow bus service. So if we're going to add money to the pool of yellow school bus funds, which there, for the first time, the sales tax has dedicated funding for yellow school bus. And as I was about to say, we're advocating for an additional $1.1 million coming from a sales tax interest account that TAM manages.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, that's okay. how should we distribute that, right? So right now it's distributed and not in a regulated fashion. And so Marin Transit's going to be going through a process of how should these funds be distributed over the next year. And that's what I mean by normalize.
You mean, so like determine criteria? Is it by student, by distance, by population, by whatever? Okay, I didn't understand.
Is there a factor for
because
congested corridors?
Right now, is
there
it
a
kind of
match
ad hoc?
requirement?
Is that what happens now?
That might be a good way of describing it. Yeah, Nancy's nodding. Yeah, it's a
squeaky
bit
wheel
ad hoc.
Is it really how that works? Squeaky, like who's making the most noise?
I wouldn't call it squeaky wheel as much as some decisions made in the past which have been continued, some new needs which it's been hard to address.
No, that
and
makes
how
great
do
sense
you
to me to have a system.
pull all this together and when I say normalize, make it a more rational kind of a well-documented and founded process.
Thank you for explaining.
That's the goal, yeah. So, there isn't enough money to provide yellow school bus service all over the county with this source. But for the first time, we'll have dedicated funds. We're throwing additional funds into the pot. We're hoping that we can inspire matching funds from cities, school districts. We'd like to think the state would come forward with yellow school bus funding, but we're not expecting that from initial forays that Nancy and her team and some of our legislators have made in this regard. So we need to do what we can with the money that we have. And that's kind of what we're going to be proceeding on.
Thank you.
Again, here's the final sales tax renewal plan. Where we are in the process is seeking approval from all 11 of our cities and towns in the Board of Soups. And with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions that you have.
Jim.
I have a question. Are you familiar with the initiative that I guess they're calling it the Tax Fairness, Transparency, and Accountability Act of 2018? It's currently having its signature count validated.
Right. Yes.
Will that affect the 6-year review of the expenditure plan?
We don't believe so.
Okay.
That particular process is geared towards the state actions around transportation funding. We understand its intent and language, and the interpretation given to us is as long as you explain to the public clearly what you intend to do in your expenditure plan process with respect to review, that you are adequately covered in terms of your review protocol, as long as it's included and well understood.
Okay. And
which we intend to do.
All right. I think somewhere in here I saw that SMART funding was not included in
That's
this plan.
correct.
Could it be put in 6 years or 12 years during this amendment process, or would you have to go back and?
The practical answer is that the board can consider amendments as they see fit. The other practical answer is that there's assurance to the public of what transportation needs are being met. And I would surmise that the board will stay within the framework of the current plan and perhaps redistribute funds within those current options. This was a very important topic in the first sales tax measure. It was an encouragement that SMART seek its own funding. I think you're going to be hearing about SMART coming back to voters sometime in the next 8 years or so, seeking an extension also of their quarter-cent sales tax. So I would surmise that the TAM board will not take that up. It needs to be an independent action by SMART.
But legally they could, depending on how you write the ballot initiative.
Legally, they could.
Okay. Any other?
I'd just like to piggyback on Jim's line of questioning. Years ago, there was a lot of discussion at the TAM board about the Adams Amendment.
That's
named after
correct.
Susan Adams. And I believe there was a subsequent decision, or at least discussion, anyway. But hasn't it been board policy at the TAM board repeatedly that no local funds will go to SMART? And is that codified? And would that then, like, let's just say some board member in the future wanted some of this money to go to SMART, wouldn't they then have to overturn that other policy?
Absolutely. There is an internal policy about expending local funds on SMART, as well as the presence of that language in the original measure and now this measure. So you have a couple of layers of policy concern that would have to be, a policy standing that would have to be addressed.
Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Just a comment for what it's worth is that I don't think you'll find much disagreement by anybody in our county for spending tax dollars on virtually anything that will reduce traffic ever. The trick is to have some immediate identifiable link. And the reason why the school bus programs, yellow bus or otherwise, are so significant is that I've become persuaded over the last few years that the complaints that we receive from our people on a regular basis about traffic stem from the congestion during to and from school, and then the congestion to and from, commute hours. And I have also become persuaded there is no, what's the expression, magic? There's no way to, but you can chip away at it, and one way to chip away is more and more of the school bus trips. So I recognize that although it can be a challenge, please push as hard as you possibly can to keep regular, available school bus service and to increase that in every possible way, and that to communicate to the different town councils like ours and the school districts even more so, their sort of moral obligation to insist that their kids go to and from using the school buses. If you can provide the logistics, I think it's our job and the school district's job to make sure that they get used. But just speaking from somebody who doesn't know anything about, and we luckily have people on our council who are very knowledgeable about transportation things, from a citizen standpoint, I regularly receive pleas begging what can be done about school hours and commute hours. And I don't know, and maybe the answer during commute hours is public transportation as well. But for school hours, for sure, there's a direct relationship if the incidence of school bus transportation by students was actually heightened.
Thank you for that suggestion. No, let me.
The master of the brutally obvious, Captain Obvious, is that what I was saying?
No. I mean, here, let me. And these, by the way, these extra slides are all available on our website. This is the green trips in terms of what we assess travel to and from schools. So we are monitoring and tracking how parents and children are getting to and from schools. What you'll see here is over a 50% rate of green trips. Active green are walking and biking. That's the dark. Lighter green are school bus service or transit supplemental service to high schools. With the growth in school population, which you see as that upper line, we've still been able to achieve, every year close to or exceeding 50% of school due to our Safe Routes to School program and our existing school transportation bus service. That's why, which we don't overemphasize, but we have a lot to lose if we can't renew this tax, because our Safe Routes to School funding, as I mentioned, doesn't have any other source. And Marin Transit would be very hard-pressed to decide amongst its children who would receive the little bit of money left if they didn't have our sales tax.
No, and
so this
I
emphasizes
agree, I agree
your
the
point.
importance of this thing, but the concept I was trying to communicate is not the importance of a 50% differential, which is useful and great, but that our goal ought to be 75%,
Correct.
90%,
Understood.
whatever. I don't shy away from acknowledging the critical importance. I'm going the other way, which is we ought to be investing even more of our energy into making that a necessary component of everything. That's all.
Understood.
All right. proselytizing aside.
Okay, great. From the public. Mr. Kuhnhart?
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Very quickly, I rise to support the idea that you vote unanimously in favor of this extension of the half-cent sales tax, particularly because the staff and the TAM board have been very responsive in the last few months to their call for advice. And here in this room, Peter Brown, our chief engineer, suggested you got to have flexibility, and they've brought the renewal of this back to just 6 years, every 6 years. Key responsiveness, adding the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, key responsiveness, adding the attention to electric vehicles, key responsiveness. Why is that so important? In May, in case you didn't see the news, NOAA recorded from Mauna Loa the highest ever May level of carbon dioxide, and the global average carbon dioxide measure of over 411.4 parts per million. In May, also in the United States, we experienced the warmest ever average temperatures across the United States. There were 5,600 local temperature records set in the United States, including Minneapolis hit 100 degrees. It's never before in May hit 100 degrees. These are not unrelated factors. And this is a responsive plan that begins to say, yes, we are in all of our actions with respect to transportation, which is the biggest contributor in Marin, where we don't have industry, to greenhouse gases. Transportation is the party that we need to do the most about, and that's happening. So I'm really impressed with what staff has been doing in response to all of the public comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bob Bundy. I'm pleased to see that there's a lot of focus on student transportation, and I know that student transportation is separate than the Yellow Bus program, and Mayor Condon can tell you that one of our biggest problems is the private schools that really don't have good public transportation to it. But I'm also encouraged by the idea that there is more for the Yellow Bus program, so that perhaps Tiburon and Belvedere won't come back to Corte Madera every year asking for money to help get the students that are in the Reed School District in Corte Madera on the Yellow Bus to the Reed School District, so that their congestion in Tiburon, is not as bad as it is. We're kicking in $25,000 a year to help their congestion problem, and I'm hoping this would actually solve that and we wouldn't see them come back again.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public? Yeah, I would agree with Dr. Bundy that I was hoping that TAM could come up with some sort of increased subsidies for the yellow school bus that we've been kicking in money, and much to my dismay, it really hasn't improved the situation any. And so I think that TAM can really do just a better, significant job of it. I'm seeing right now, and I thank TAM for that, some of our improvements in safe routes to school that are affecting Corte Madera right now. And also, I am so pleased with the continuing support of the crossing guards. That is just super. And as Dr. Bundy mentioned, if only the private schools would do a fraction of what TAM is doing. In the mornings, I can't even get out of my driveway. So it's, I really do thank you for all that you're doing. And we're seeing it right here in town. Jim?
From a practical standpoint, am I really off base saying 187,000? We better mentally plan on peeling off a bunch of that to subsidize, continue the subsidy for the yellow bus program?
I think you should participate. I'm sure your town board member will. In the process we go through over the next year to take a look at the best way to distribute these funds and how do we grow these funds. Then I think you'll have a better framework in which to make that judgment.
Okay.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I have a few. Okay. Thank you for coming, both of you. Actually, all three of you. Thank you, Molly. I want to remind people that might be viewing that this is not an increase. This is a continuation at a half cent. One of the reasons that the Transportation Authority of Marin is asking for this to be renewed is because the old funding formula is outdated and it's not providing enough flexibility. For instance, the TAM board has had many discussions about how to adequately fund the crossing guard program because the funding program from the original Measure A, that was what, 10 or 12 years ago? 12 years ago, is not currently providing enough funds. So I am really happy that this measure will not only address our current needs, but will allow for occasional review every 6 years to potentially adjust the percentages to meet the current needs because, you know, there are going to be a lot of changes in transportation in the coming years. And, you know, we won't really know what the needs will be until we're in the midst of experiencing those changes. Sloan, you had commented on the many needs related to schools and commute. I'll be perfectly honest, this is not enough money to meet all the needs, nor will it be enough for the school bus program. Federal and state sources of funding are evaporating. For instance, Diane Steinhauser mentioned that Safe Routes to School funding from federal and state sources are completely gone. We only now have local funds. But this is a source of really critically needed local funds that will meet local needs. And anyway, I wholeheartedly support this council's approval of this expenditure plan.
Okay, any other comments?
Good enough for me.
Okay, then, Diane, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Thank you for coming.
Can I make a
Then
motion?
I would like to entertain a motion, please.
I'd like to move resolution number 24/2018, resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Corte Madera approving the Transportation Authority of Marin's final half-cent transportation sales tax renewal expenditure plan.
Second?
Councilmember Andrews?
Yes.
Councilmember Bailey?
Yes.
Councilmember Ravazio? Vice Mayor First?
Yes.
Mayor Condon?
Yes.
Thank you, Diane.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for staying so late. I
Thank you.
appreciate it. And I'll move that we
Okay.
can
Um,
extend the meeting because we're after 9:30.
Oh, thank you. Wow. Okay, do I have a
We
second?
have a couple We have not had council member reports in a month and a half.
Yeah, can I have a second?
And we have the agenda. It should take
Whether
10
we're going to do
minutes.
council reports.
Yeah, I don't mind. Just
Adjourn.
We're going to do town manager
there a second?
reports.
Okay.
and Council reports.
So I'm moving that we extend the meeting until 10 o'clock.
And do I have a second?
Yes. God, if looks could kill, I would be an ant right now. Yes, I second the motion.
Did you get on video?
Councilmember Andrews?
You got my looks.
That was
Councilmember Bailey?
Yes.
Councilmember Ravazio? Vice Mayor First?
Yes.
Mayor Condon?
Yes, okay. Okay, so we will move speedily along.
We extended the meeting by
We-
half an hour.
Yeah, sorry about that, Todd. If we could have town manager reports, please.
I just wanted to acknowledge our Central Marin Fire Authority. We've had 3 potentially very serious fires in the Central Marin in the last few weeks. We've had 2 in Green Beret. One was a few weeks ago. The other one was today. It was actually an acre to an acre and a half fire up in the Greenbrier Hills in the county jurisdiction. The response times were fabulous, and they were able to control the fires very quickly. And we also had one on Edison last week. And so it's just, I want to acknowledge, we don't have fires every day, but we've had 3 potentially very serious ones in the last 3 weeks. And so our fire department's doing an outstanding job, and I wanted to recognize them. And then I'm going to defer to our town clerk and ask her to give an update on our election.
Oh.
Oh, I wish I had something enthralling to report. But I would just like to say that I asked the registrar of voters yesterday, because she said I could contact her on Monday afternoon to see if she had an update for me on the status of our count of the still outstanding 187 provisional ballots pertaining to the Corte Madera election. She did tell me that the provisional ballots would be included in the count that will be updated on the county's website tomorrow at 5 p.m. I am going to check in with her tomorrow to verify that all 187 of those ballots will be included in that count, and I'll be sure to let you and the candidates know as soon as I receive a response to that question. And then they do want to reiterate that they have until July 5th to certify the results of the election. They don't anticipate it taking that long. They said to check in the week of the 25th, and hopefully they'd be able to tell me when they plan to certify the votes. But everything is kind of hinging on the count of the final outstanding several thousand provisional ballots countywide.
Thank you, Rebecca.
So to that, it's the potential that on July 3rd, the current sitting council will be in place. We need to be prepared for that. So we're going to communicate every day to see, because we have a July 3rd meeting.
I think our ordinance changing the election from November to June does state that the council member terms were continued or were extended until the certification of the results of the June 5th election. So the short answer is that you are our council members until the vote is certified.
And we'll be talking about garbage rates at the next meeting.
Holy evil.
You're stuck until it gets certified, right? So that means you have to count on governmental bureaucracy before you're free. Good luck and God bless on that one.
If that's the case, will we get paid for July?
That's a good
Our whole
point.
$300?
You should get it. Yeah.
So, were you planning on being here? I thought you were going on vacation about then.
We'll talk after the meeting about my vacation plans.
I think Eli is still on vacation until the July 5th.
So he's going to miss the parade?
Yeah. Okay, so you'll keep us in suspense.
I'll keep you as informed as I'm able to.
Okay, anything else to report? Okay, then we'll do council member reports. Jim, do you want to start us off?
I hadn't planned on one. No report.
Okay. Diane?
Thanks. We've missed a couple of council member reports because we've had such long meetings, so I don't know if I mentioned to you all that I went to Caltrans headquarters in Oakland with Skidmore, Winds and Merrill and our Public Works Director, Peter Brown, to talk with Caltrans about the Tamalpais Drive overcrossing pedestrian improvements. It is moving swimmingly at Caltrans, and I'm very pleased with that. They gave a presentation about various iterations that have been discussed, including one that I was really not happy about because it included some crosswalks at places that were really create a lot of conflict for pedestrians and potential safety hazards. Their recommendation is that those be eliminated, so I'm or at least rejected. So I'm very pleased with how Caltrans is moving forward with that. Peter Brown's on it. I'm happy to hand over my paperwork to whoever takes on kind of transportation or at least that element of it going forward. I also wanted to give just a quick update on a CMSA, Central Marin Sanitation Agency thing. The CMSA agency has implemented new laboratory and plant information systems. Because it automates a lot of the reporting, they now have a little bit extra lab capacity. So if sanitary district number 2 needs lab work, CMSA might be able to do that, and we might be able to realize some cost savings, especially if we are currently using a laboratory out of the area. So I wanted to share that, and that is all.
Thank you. Sloan?
I attended multiple meetings on behalf of Bob Ravazio to the Central Marin Paramedic Authority, Ross Valley Paramedic Authority. I also attended multiple meetings, I think since I last reported, of the Marin County Council of Mayors, Council Members Legislative Committee, and multiple meetings of the Marin Clean Energy, including at least one ex parte meeting with one of our newest commissioners of the California Public Utilities Commission. All of the 3, multi-district entities are, struggling with concerns, but there are no major downsides of any of them. If any of you would like detail about any of those 3, please feel free to reach out, including any member of the public. Otherwise, in the, trend for lateness of the night, I will defer any further reporting.
Okay, thank you. And just a couple of things to report. I attended the League of California Cities Housing, Community, and Economic Development meeting up in Sacramento. And just prior to that meeting, we had a report from the governor's office. And Governor Brown is leaving Sacramento with one of the largest reserve funds in decades.
It's fantastic.
And part of it is large in part due to the fact that some of his projects never got off the ground.
Oh, that's not so fantastic. I'm sorry to hear that.
And so anyway, so the talk is that a lot of those funds are going to be dedicated to homeless problems and housing issues. One thing with the housing, in the housing meeting that was brought up was that the Bill 828 is moving along, and that is one that provided for over 100% of the RENA numbers to
125.
be zoned. And because there was some language in that legislation that made it look like there might be some local control, the question came up, which I posed, was that they kept repeating methodology. And I said, nowhere have we ever been given any information as to what the methodology is, where they were coming up with the numbers. And the group agreed that all of a sudden, when they kept mentioning methodology but never the explanation. So at any rate, our committee voted not to support it unless there were amendments to it. So it's one thing that I think that in leaving my position on the council, that I really encourage those who remain and the new ones who are elected to make sure that you know what is in the housing legislation before you support it or oppose it. Another thing too is I was just going to type up some notes because of the late hour that I will send to all of you. It's not a Brown Act thing, it's just a report of what was discussed at that meeting.
At which meeting?
At the League of California Cities meeting. I did want to mention, I've been in the past few years the league representative to Sacramento at the end of the league session, which is in September. And they do ask for representation from each city to go to vote. And so Rebecca has all the information on it. They should have gotten it too, didn't they? This time it's going to be in Long Beach, my favorite place. And but I do encourage that somebody from the town represent us, and that somebody apply to be on one of the committees that that is sponsored by the league. You get so much insight into legislation that is going on that otherwise you might not hear, and a lot of it is really critical to small towns. So don't forget that. And then you didn't report on LAFCO. On LAFCO,
We took one. Let me report. We took one significant action that was unanimously ratified, which is to honor the famous Carla Condon at her council.
No.
It was. That was like an action we actually took.
Oh, God. All right, I just heard that everybody extended the contract of the interim
Oh, it's very unclear. Yes, that's my understanding
from
as well.
2 months to 6 months.
Yes, I believe that's right. It was not perfectly clear, and they're still waiting for a response from the interim executive director, but I believe that was the consensus.
Okay.
It's honestly, Carla, it was not perfectly clear, but I think you were right in that.
Okay, so anyway. So draft agenda.
Can
Mm-hmm.
since everybody's actually doing council reports, I just wanted to report the Marin Telecommunications Agency had a meeting. An issue that's going to be coming up and hitting a lot of towns will be the 5G cell towers. And
Like, what's the issue, Jim?
it's basically Verizon is talking about putting them around town.
Oh.
And under what conditions are we going to allow them to do it?
I did hear about this.
So,
Okay, and that's really important because I think we do have an ordinance on the books as far as size and location and all that other stuff. So, because,
It's a very complicated issue.
Preemption, so may want to look into that at a future council meeting, what you can and can't do. We went through this in Richmond, and it's.
yeah, because I know at the state
There are limits
level.
on what a local community can do.
Yeah, because at the state level, they were really trying to take away total local control of it. And that's when we all stood on the steps of the Capitol. And fortunately, the governor vetoed it. I mean, I went to Berkeley, I never protested, but I got my protest there.
Did they tear gas you?
So, anyway, no.
Then
they
you didn't have a proper protest experience.
You're right, you're right. So anyway, okay, for our July 3rd draft agenda, which is sort of ever-changing.
So 2 topics that'll be on July 3rd, and then the 2 meetings in August, depending on how it goes. Our big topics are the garbage rates. We've been talking about it for a while. It's coming. We had a third-party analysis. That's what's taken us 2 months to really analyze and confirm that those rates should be what they are. So that'll go before the council on the 3rd, and also the renewal of the paramedic tax. Remember, that's a 4-year tax, $75 a year. So that'll come to the council as well, July 3rd. Those are the 2 items. We're going to keep everything else on the consent calendar.
Okay, so any other additions or changes to it?
Welcome back, Randy.
It's great to be back.
So, yeah,
Hate to see
well-
it ending so early.
Yeah.
That was pretty good
Oh,
sarcasm. I
that-
didn't think
All these changes
I like it. That's what I'm talking about right
I
there.
enjoyed it.
He's like, man, this is nice.
Hey, I enjoyed
We should have gotten Michael to come in.
Carly, you gotta hit the thing
And
to
have him
adjourn.
sit in Ravasia's seat.
Okay, oh gosh, that would have been funny. Okay,
You can pound
thank
that.
you all for everything. In
Thank you,
case we
Carla.
don't know what happens by the 3rd.
Well, you'll at least open up the meeting, right?
Yes.
Who will?
Okay, so if there are no further objections, meeting is adjourned.
Boom. Thank you.